Stop scrolling right now. Look at this machine. Does it look like a spaceship from the 1950s? Or maybe a giant spider made of metal? You might think these are bad Photoshop jobs or props from a sci-fi movie, but believe it or not, every single machine in this video is 100% real. We are digging into the lost files of history to find the 10 weirdest, rarest, and most mind-blowing trucks ever built. We are talking about forgotten giants that completely broke the rules of what a vehicle should look like. From Art Deco masterpieces to a 10-wheeled desert monster that defies physics. By the end of this video, you are going to question reality. Which one would you actually dare to drive? Smash that subscribe button, buckle up, and let's roll. We are kicking things off with the grandfather of the modern delivery van, the Mercedes-Benz L319. Before the Sprinter van took over the world, there was this curvy, charming piece of German engineering. Launched in 1955, this does not look like your typical rugged truck. It looks incredibly friendly, doesn't it? But do not let that cute face fool you. This was Mercedes' first real attempt at a light truck after World War II, and they absolutely nailed it. Unlike the heavy, long-nosed trucks of that era, the L319 featured a cab-over design to maximize space in tight European cities. Under the hood, or rather under the cabin, it was powered by a nearly indestructible diesel engine that produced around 43 horsepower. While the top speed was only about 50 miles per hour, speed was never the point. It was built for reliability and utility. You will notice the distinct lack of a traditional hood. Instead, you have that iconic flat rounded nose with the massive Mercedes star. It bridged the gap between a small passenger car and a heavy hauler, offering a gross vehicle weight of nearly 3.6 tons. It was the workforce that helped rebuild Germany's economy. In the United States, we are used to massive Ford F-Series or Chevys, so seeing an L319 feels like spotting a unicorn. Today, collectors go absolutely crazy for these things, often turning them into vintage food trucks or stylish campers. A fully restored model can fetch impressive prices at auctions because they are so rare. It is proof that a truck does not have to be aggressive to be legendary. It just needs to be reliable. If you saw this rolling down the street today, you would definitely stop to take a picture of this smiling truck. Now let's travel back to the future, or at least the 1940s version of it. This is the GMC Futureliner, and it is arguably the most majestic vehicle ever to roll on asphalt. General Motors only built 12 of these behemoths for their Parade of Progress. The goal was to tour across the United States and show small-town Americans the incredible technology of the future, like jet engines and microwaves. Standing at over 11 feet tall and 33 feet long, the Futureliner is an Art Deco masterpiece that looks more like a train than a truck. The engineering here is absolutely wild. It features dual wheels on the front axle, which means it has 4 front tires for steering. The driver sits centrally in a high cockpit, looking down on traffic like a pilot, with no side mirrors, just a complex system of lenses. Power came from a 302 cubic inch inline-6 engine, and while it looked fast, it struggled to hit 40 miles per hour due to its massive 13-ton weight. The sides of the truck open up hydraulically to reveal stage displays, turning the vehicle into a mobile theater. Only a few of these still exist today, and when one goes to auction, we are talking about serious money. One actually sold for over $4 million at Barrett-Jackson, making it one of the most expensive trucks in history. It represents an era of American optimism where we thought the future would be sleek, chrome-plated, and streamlined. It was not just about hauling cargo, it was about hauling ideas. Sadly, the Parade of Progress was cut short by World War II, making the Futureliner a rare snapshot of a dream that never fully happened. If the Futureliner was about science, the Labatt Streamliner was about style and, of course, delivering beer. Commissioned by the Labatt Brewing Company in Canada during the late 1930s, this truck was designed by Count Alexis de Sachnovsky. Yes, a literal count designed a beer truck. He applied the principles of aerodynamics to a heavy hauler, creating a shape that looked more like a grounded airplane or a locomotive than a delivery vehicle. The curves are stunning, earning it awards at the World's Fair for its groundbreaking design language. Mechanically, the Streamliner was built on a White Motor Company chassis, specifically chosen for its durability. But the bodywork was pure art, hand-beaten from aluminum and wood to create that teardrop shape. The cab slanted backward aggressively, significantly reducing wind resistance. This was decades ahead of its time for trucks, where most were just square bricks on wheels. While it helped with fuel efficiency, the main purpose was marketing. It was a rolling billboard that proved beer delivery could be sophisticated and futuristic. Unfortunately, the Streamliners had a tragic ending. Most of these beautiful machines were scrapped for their metal during the war efforts or simply fell into disrepair. However, their legacy lives on through historical photos and a few painstaking recreations. It reminds us of a time when industrial design was not just about cost-cutting, it was about making a statement. Imagine seeing this rolling down the highway today. It would stop traffic instantly. It is the kind of elegance we just do not see in the trucking industry anymore. Okay, I promised you things you would not believe exist, and here is the ultimate proof. This is the Dabian. Now, to be technically accurate, this is not a factory vintage truck, but a modern custom monster built with vintage DNA. Owned by the Rainbow Sheikh of the UAE, this is widely considered the largest SUV in the world. Just look at the scale of this thing next to a normal car. It looks like it could crush a house without even noticing. It is a one-of-a-kind creation that pushes engineering to the absolute limit. The Dabian measures over 35 feet long and utilizes the chassis from a vintage Oshkosh M-1075 military truck. But here is the kicker. It has a Jeep Wrangler cabin grafted onto the back as the driver's seat. It sits on 10 massive wheels. Yes, 10. It is designed to float over the soft sand dunes of the desert like a ship on the ocean. Weighing in at a staggering 24 tons, this beast is powered by a 600-horsepower Caterpillar diesel engine to get it moving. The front-end design is actually based on a vintage truck style from the 1940s, giving it that retro look despite being built recently. The Dabian is not about practicality, it is about excess and imagination. It combines the raw, rugged history of American military transport with a level of luxury that is hard to comprehend. While you won't see this on a public highway, it stands as a monument to what happens when you have unlimited budget and a love for giant trucks. It is real, it drives, and it is terrifying. Let's get back to some pure American grit. Meet the Corvette D600, often affectionately called the High Boy, or simply the Tall Boy. Produced in North Carolina in the early 1950s, this truck looks like it hit the gym and never skipped neck day. The most striking feature is undeniably that incredibly high hood and the massive radiator grille that gives it a distinct, almost human-like face. Corvette was not a huge manufacturer like Ford or GM, but they built trucks for the toughest jobs imaginable. The reason for its bizarre appearance was purely functional. The D600 was designed with a massive Continental gas engine, or a Cummins diesel that physically required the hood to be that tall just to fit it in. The fenders sit high off the tires, giving it a look of being ready to wade through a swamp or deep mud at any moment. It was a heavy-duty prime mover, often used for hauling massive loads of timber or freight across the country before the interstate highway system was fully built. These trucks are incredibly rare today. If you are lucky enough to see one at a vintage truck show, you will notice it towers over everything else from that era. The driver sat way up high, dealing with heavy steering in a loud, hot cabin. It represents the golden age of independent American truck manufacturing, where function dictated form, resulting in a brute force aesthetic that is undeniably cool. The Corvette D600 is a reminder of when trucks were built by hand, for hands that weren't afraid to get dirty. Now for something completely different. To my American viewers, this might look like a golf cart on steroids, but in the UK, this is a cultural icon known as the milk float. Specifically, this is the classic Morrison Electricar. Before Tesla made electric vehicles cool, the British were using these battery-powered workhorses to deliver fresh milk to doorsteps every single morning for decades. They look fragile, but they were actually incredibly robust, carrying tons of glass bottles on their flatbeds while navigating narrow neighborhood streets. The engineering is simple yet brilliant. They are powered by heavy lead-acid batteries, which made them slow, topping out at around 15 to 20 miles per hour. But speed was not needed. Silence was the key. They were designed not to wake up the neighborhood at 4 a.m. The open cabin allowed the milkman to jump in and out hundreds of times a morning without opening a door. It was the ultimate stop-and-go vehicle, perfectly optimized for its specific job. What is truly amazing is their longevity. Because they have very few moving parts compared to a gas engine, some of these floats from the 1950s and 60s are still running today. They became a beloved part of British life. While modern delivery trucks are faster, none have the charm of the humble milk float. It is a testament to the idea that sometimes you do not need horsepower or aerodynamics. You just need a design that fits the job perfectly. You cannot talk about vintage trucks without mentioning the legend, the Peterbilt 351. This is the classic needle nose that ruled the American highways from 1954 all the way to 1976. Now, movie buffs might scream, "That is the truck from the movie Duel." Close, but not quite. The movie used the lighter Model 281, which had a single drive axle. This is the Model 351, its bigger, tougher brother, featuring twin drive axles for heavier loads. It defined the look of the American trucker for a generation. The narrow nose was not just for style, it allowed for better visibility and easier access to the engine for repairs. It is rugged, loud, and smells like diesel and freedom. The 351 features a butterfly hood that opens from the sides, aluminum cabs to save weight, and a chassis that could handle millions of miles of abuse. Truckers love them because they are purely mechanical. There are no computers, no sensors, just gears and guts. Driving one requires real skill and strength. Today, the Peterbilt 351 is a highly sought-after collector's item. Seeing one on the road is an event. It has a menacing, purposeful stance that modern aerodynamic trucks just cannot match. It reminds us of the golden era of trucking when the radio was your only friend and the road went on forever. If you want to experience what trucking was really like in the 60s, sit inside a 351. It is the quintessential American big rig that built this country. If you think three-wheelers are unstable, the British engineers at Scammell would like a word with you. This is the Scammell Townsman, the final evolution of the famous mechanical horse. Designed for the tight, twisting streets of London and old railway yards, this three-wheeled tractor unit could turn on a dime. Literally, it has a turning circle so tight it could practically chase its own tail. Released in the 1960s, the Townsman looks bizarre to modernize, with its fiberglass cabin that looks like something out of a cartoon. The single front wheel steers the vehicle, allowing for incredible maneuverability that a four-wheel truck simply could not achieve. The driver sits in a futuristic beak-like cab. It was powered by a modest Leyland engine, giving it a top speed of roughly 40 to 50 miles per hour, which frankly is terrifying enough on three wheels. It utilized a unique automatic coupling system, allowing the driver to hook up and drop trailers without ever leaving the cab, which was revolutionary for efficiency. However, they were also known for being a bit tippy. If you took a corner too fast without a trailer, things could get scary very quickly. Despite the danger, as a piece of engineering history, the Townsman is fascinating. It solved a specific problem, urban congestion, in a uniquely British way. It is weird, it is wonderful, and it is totally gone from the roads today. Seeing one now feels like looking at a toy that somehow grew up to be a real truck. From Britain to Germany, here is another three-wheeled oddity that defines minimalism, the Tempo Hanseat. Developed post-World War II, Germany needed cheap transport to rebuild, and the Hanseat was the answer. It is basically a motorcycle front end welded to a truck bed. It looks incredibly simple because it is. There is no luxury here, just a steering wheel, a seat, and an engine. It became the backbone of small businesses, delivering everything from coal to vegetables across the country. Mechanically, it is fascinating. It was powered by a tiny two-stroke engine, usually around 400 cc. That means it was loud, smoky, and definitely not fast, topping out around 30 miles per hour fully loaded. The engine sits right above the front wheel, and the engine actually turns with the wheel when you steer. It is crude technology, but it was easy to fix and cheap to run. The blue smoke trailing behind it was a common sight in German towns in the 1950s. Interestingly, after production stopped in Germany, the tooling was sent to India, where it was built as the Bajaj Tempo for decades. It is a vehicle that refuses to die. It is bouncy, unstable, and noisy, but it has a cult following today because driving one is an absolute adventure. You do not drive a Tempo, you wrestle with it. It reminds us that sometimes the simplest solution is the one that lasts the longest. Just make sure you bring some earplugs. Finally, we have the Henschel HS100. When you think of German trucks, you usually think of Mercedes or MAN, but Henschel was a powerhouse of engineering in its own right. The HS100, introduced in the 1960s, is a masterclass in industrial design. It is boxy, muscular, and looks like it was carved out of a solid block of granite. Henschel was originally known for building locomotives and even aircraft, so their trucks were famously over-engineered and incredibly tough. The HS100 featured a distinct bulge on the front grille and the six-pointed Henschel star, which is different from the Mercedes star. It was powered by a robust diesel engine that offered high torque for heavy construction work. These trucks were the kings of the construction site, hauling gravel, cement, and machinery without breaking a sweat. The suspension was advanced for its time, designed to handle rough terrain while keeping the heavy load stable. It was a serious tool for serious work. These trucks are incredibly rare now because the Henschel brand was eventually absorbed by Mercedes-Benz in the late 60s. Seeing an HS100 is a reminder of a lost brand that prioritized durability above all else. It is not the flashiest truck on this list, but it commands respect. It represents the strong, silent type of the vintage truck world. If this truck could talk, it would tell stories of building the modern world, one heavy load at a time. We have just seen the cute Mercedes L319, the futuristic GM Futureliner, the 10-wheeled monster Dabian, and even the 3-wheeled madness of the Scammell Townsman. From German efficiency to American excess, these 10 machines prove that trucking history is anything but boring. So I have to ask you, if you could restore just one of these and park it in your driveway, which one are you picking? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more insane machinery. Thanks for watching and keep on trucking. Forget everything you think you know about trucks. Modern rigs are just boring plastic boxes compared to the mechanical monsters we've dug up today. We are talking about 500-ton leviathans that shatter pavement, engines that sound like machine guns, and a logging beast so massive it needs water-cooled brakes just to keep from bursting into flames. From a bizarre Mickey Mouse oddity to a Guinness World Record holder that defies physics, these are the 10 strangest vintage trucks that actually existed. You won't believe the engineering freak at number 1. It is absolutely terrifying. So smash that subscribe button, buckle up, and watch until the very last second because this heavy-duty history lesson is about to get wild. Let's ease into this list with something that isn't just strange, it is absolutely stunning. Meet the Diamond T201, often hailed as the Cadillac of trucks. Produced in the United States starting in the late 1930s and running through the 40s, the Diamond T wasn't built for brute force alone, it was built for style. In an era where trucks were strictly utilitarian workhorses, rough, loud, and uncomfortable, the Chicago-based Diamond T Company decided that truck drivers deserved a little bit of luxury. It features a stainless steel grille that looks like it belongs on a high-end luxury sedan, not a pickup. What made the Model 201 so bizarre for its time was its heavy borrowing from passenger car design. The fenders were sweeping and elegant, the cab was lower and more streamlined, and the interior featured passenger car gauges and comfort levels that were unheard of in commercial haulage. Under that stylish hood lay a Hercules six-cylinder engine that was virtually indestructible, capable of hauling a payload of roughly 2,000 pounds. While 2,000 pounds might seem modest by today's heavy-duty standards, back then doing it at highway speeds of 50 miles per hour in such comfort was a revolutionary concept. The Diamond T201 is a testament to a time when industrial design was considered an art form. It is weird because it prioritized beauty in a market segment that usually didn't care about looks at all. It was a one-tonner that blurred the lines between a heavy-duty worker and a Sunday cruiser. Today, finding a 201 in original condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, and collectors in the US will pay a small fortune for the privilege of owning the most stylish truck ever built. It remains a rolling sculpture that proves work trucks don't have to be ugly. From American elegance, we jump across the pond to British quirkiness with the Foden S20. If you look at the cab of this truck, you might notice a resemblance to a certain famous cartoon character. Yes, this is affectionately known in the trucking world as the Mickey Mouse cab. Introduced in the 1950s by Foden, one of Britain's oldest truck manufacturers, the S20 has one of the most distinct faces in history. This is primarily due to the split windshield and the large rounded panels that distinctly mimic a smiling face, giving it a personality that most steel machines lack. The weirdness here isn't just cosmetic, it was a pioneering use of materials. The S20's cab was a composite construction utilizing fiberglass reinforcing. At the time, this was space-age stuff, helping to shave off hundreds of pounds of deadweight compared to traditional steel cabs. Under the skin, the Foden S20 was a beast, often featuring the legendary Foden two-stroke diesel engine. These engines had a screaming, high-pitched exhaust note that you could hear from miles away. It wasn't fast by modern standards, topping out around 40 miles per hour, but its torque was sufficient to haul heavy loads across the UK's narrow roads. The S20 was a favorite among British haulers for its reliability and that iconic look. Foden took a massive risk with composite materials to prevent the rust that plagued metal cabs in the damp British weather, and it paid off. The shape was distinct, sure, but it was also surprisingly aerodynamic for the 1950s. It's a truck that proves you can be serious about heavy hauling while looking a little bit ridiculous. It's charming, it's bizarre, and it remains a true icon of the UK highways that collectors strive to preserve to this day. Staying in Britain, we move to a rival of Foden, ERF. In the 1950s, they released the KV series, and instantly it grabbed attention for one very specific design feature. The KV actually stood for Clear View, spelled with a K, and the reason is staring you right in the face. While other trucks had split screens or tiny flat glass, the ERF KV boasted a panoramic curved glass windshield with rounded corners. This design offered visibility previously unknown to truck drivers, eliminating dangerous blind spots that were common in older, boxier designs. Mechanically, the ERF KV was usually powered by the Gardner diesel engine, typically producing around 150 horsepower. If you know anything about vintage engines, you know that Gardner engines are slow-revving, incredibly fuel-efficient, and essentially immortal. The combination of the futuristic Clear View cab and the bulletproof Gardner powertrain made the ERF KV a legend. It could handle gross vehicle weights of over 30,000 pounds with ease. The styling is almost Art Deco, with the radiator grille integrating smoothly into the flowing lines of the front panel, looking more like a locomotive than a truck. The cab itself was beautifully rounded, moving away from the flat-nosed designs of the pre-war era. The KV was designed to maximize the driver's ability to navigate tight roads and loading docks, making it a favorite for drivers who spend days on the road. It's a strange mix of forward-thinking aesthetics and conservative, reliable engineering that creates a truly unique vintage machine. Even today, at vintage truck rallies, the fishbowl visibility of the ERF KV stands out, reminding us of a time when visibility was the newest luxury feature. Let's head north to Scotland to talk about the Albion River. The Albion motto was, "Sure as the sunrise," and looking at the River, you can see why. While it might look like a standard vintage lorry to the untrained eye, the River was a technological oddity in the 1950s and 60s because of its chassis configuration. The cab design, known as the LAD cab, Leyland Albion Dodge, offered great visibility but was notoriously cramped and hot, sitting right on top of the engine. Despite the discomfort, it had a rugged charm that defined the Scottish working class. This was a lightweight six-wheeler with a double drive, meaning both rear axles were powered in a 6x4 configuration. At the time, most six-wheelers were heavy, lumbering giants weighing tens of thousands of pounds. Albion managed to engineer the Reaver to be lightweight enough to carry a massive payload legally, yet tough enough to handle off-road construction sites. With a gross vehicle weight of around 40,000 pounds, it punched way above its weight class. The weird factor comes from its non-reactive suspension system and the sheer compactness of the drivetrain. The Albion Reaver became the darling of the construction and tipper industry across the UK. It could scramble out of muddy quarries where heavier, more powerful trucks would sink and get stuck. Its distinct engine note and the whining sound of its transmission are nostalgic triggers for anyone who grew up in the UK during that era. It wasn't the biggest, but its unique lightweight 6x4 design makes it a marvel of efficiency. It proved that in the world of trucking, being lighter and smarter is sometimes better than just being bigger. Next up is the Knight of the Road, the Atkinson Borderer. Atkinson vehicles, based in Preston, England, had a very specific way of doing things. The Borderer, particularly the Mark I and Mark X models, is instantly recognizable by the big A inside a circle right in the center of the radiator grille. But the real oddity here is, once again, the construction material. Atkinson was a pioneer in using glass-reinforced plastic, fiberglass, for their cabs long before it became industry standard. It looks tough, almost aggressive, with its flat front and exposed radiator. That exposed radiator was often just a facade. Behind the grille was usually a Gardner engine that ran so cool it barely needed the airflow. The quirkiness of the Atkinson lies in its customization. Unlike mass-produced trucks, Atkinsons were often hand-built to specific customer orders. You could order a Borderer with almost any combination of engine and gearbox you wanted. Most were set up for a gross combination weight of roughly 70,000 pounds, a standard for British haulage at the time. The driving experience was raw, with no power steering and a clutch that required a strong left leg. The environment inside the fiberglass cab was notoriously loud, and the heating was practically non-existent, often leading drivers to wear heavy coats while driving in winter. Yet drivers loved them. There was a pride in driving an Atkinson Black Knight or Borderer. It represented a rugged individualism that is lost in today's standardized fleet trucks. It's a fiberglass box of noise and power, and that is why we love it. The Borderer remains a symbol of the golden age of British haulage, where the driver had to really drive the machine. Let's cross the Alps into Italy. Italian trucks are often overlooked, but the OM Super Orione is a machine that demands respect. Produced in the 1950s by OM, Officine Meccaniche, this truck was a heavy-duty monster designed to conquer the steep winding passes of the Italian mountains. The design of the truck is distinctly Italian. It has a mustache-style grille and a very tall, commanding stance. It looks like a brute in a tailored suit, combining rugged utility with a touch of Mediterranean flair that makes it stand out from its German and British counterparts. What makes the Super Orione strange and special is what powered it. In an era where most European trucks were running inline-six engines, the Super Orione boasted a massive 90-degree V8 diesel engine. A V8 in a commercial truck in the 1950s was a serious statement. It produced around 170 horsepower. While that sounds low today, back then it was the king of the road. This power allowed it to tow loads exceeding 40 tons up steep gradients where other trucks would stall. The sound of that V8 echoing off the tunnel walls in the Alps was absolutely legendary. The Super Orione was famous for pulling road trains in Italy, a truck and a trailer with a combined weight that would crush lesser vehicles. It represents a golden age of Italian industrial might before strict regulations standardized truck sizes. The combination of that rare V8 configuration and the stylish, almost Art Deco front end makes the OM Super Orione a unicorn in the world of vintage trucking. It is sophisticated, powerful, and undeniably cool, proving that Italy's talent for engines extended far beyond Ferrari and Maserati. While we are in Italy, we have to talk about the king of Africa. This is the Fiat 682N2. If you go to certain parts of Africa today, you might still see these running. The 682 is bizarre not because of a weird shape, but because of its unkillable nature. Launched in the early 50s, this truck was so good, so simple, and so robust that it remained in production in various forms for over 3 decades. The N2 version is iconic, featuring the classic Baffy or mustache chrome whiskers on the front grille, giving it a friendly yet sturdy face. The real story is the chassis. The steel used in the Fiat 682 frames was of such high quality that they simply refused to snap. In many developing nations, these trucks were routinely overloaded by 200%, carrying loads of 50,000 to 60,000 pounds on trucks rated for half that amount. The engine was a slow-revving, high-torque masterpiece that could run on questionable quality fuel without complaining. It wasn't fast, struggling to hit 45 miles per hour, but speed wasn't the point. Reliability was the only metric that mattered, and the 682N2 scored a perfect 10. It's strange to think that a truck designed for paved Italian roads became the backbone of transport for an entire continent thousands of miles away. The 682N2 lacks modern comforts, no AC, power steering was a luxury, but its mechanical sympathy is unmatched. It is a legend that refuses to die. In the world of disposable technology where cars break down after a few years, the Fiat 682N2 stands as a monument to permanent engineering. It is the vehicular equivalent of a hammer, simple, heavy, and it works every single time. Now prepare your ears. We are going to Germany to meet the Krupp Mustang. When you think of Krupp, you might think of steel manufacturing, but in the post-war era, they made some of the most distinct trucks on the Autobahn. Visually, the Mustang is imposing. It has a long alligator-style hood and a massive wide grille that screams authority. These trucks were instrumental in the Wirtschaftswunder, or the German economic miracle. But what truly makes the Mustang stand out isn't how it looks, but the terrifying and wonderful noise it makes. These trucks were powered by 2-stroke diesel engines producing upwards of 200 horsepower. Unlike the 4-stroke engines in almost every other truck, the Krupp 2-stroke fired twice as often, creating a distinct rapid-fire rat-a-tat-tat noise that sounded more like a machine gun than a transport vehicle. The engineering was complex and strange, using a scavenging blower to force air into the cylinders. This allowed the Mustang to haul loads of over 40,000 pounds at speeds nearing 55 miles per hour, outpacing many of its rivals on the emerging highway networks. Driving one required skill. You had to keep the revs high to keep that 2-stroke engine happy, or it would lose power and smoke heavily. The Krupp Mustang is a bizarre, noisy, and wonderful piece of mechanical history that sounds like absolutely nothing else on Earth. Sadly, the complexity of the 2-stroke engine eventually led to its demise, making running examples extremely rare today. If you ever hear a Krupp Mustang approaching, you will feel it in your chest before you see it. It is the heavy metal drummer of the vintage truck world. Now things get serious. We are leaving the highway and heading into the deep, dark forests of British Columbia, Canada. Enter the Hayes HDX. This is not a delivery truck. This is a log-hauling Leviathan. The Hayes HDX was built for one purpose: to haul hundreds of tons of timber down steep, treacherous mountain logging roads where a normal truck would disintegrate in minutes. It sits high off the ground, with square, brutalist styling and a radiator guard that alone weighs more than a compact car. It says, "I eat trees for breakfast." The HDX is physically massive, often featuring 12 to 14-foot wide bunks to hold the logs. But the weirdest and most critical feature of the Hayes HDX is its braking system. Traditional air brakes would burn up and fail on the steep descents with such heavy loads. So, Hayes equipped these giants with water-cooled brakes. The truck carries a massive tank of water solely to spray onto the brake drums to keep them from melting and catching fire. These trucks were often overloaded to carry payload weights of 200,000 to 300,000 pounds. Seeing a Hayes HDX coming down a mountain road with a cloud of steam rising from its wheels is a sight you never forget. It's a monster built for a monster job. The Hayes Manufacturing Company is no longer with us, but the HDX trucks are so over-engineered that many are still working in the woods today, refusing to retire. They are symbols of Canadian grit and engineering resilience. It is a truck that laughs at the concept of maximum load limits and continues to define the extreme end of the trucking spectrum. And now we arrive at the final boss, the ultimate giant. The weirdest, biggest, and most powerful road-legal truck in history, the Nicholas Tractomas. Built by the French specialist company Nicholas, specifically the TR10X10 model, this machine holds the Guinness World Record for the largest semi-truck on the planet. It is bizarre because it looks like a standard truck that was hit by a gamma-ray burst and turned into the Incredible Hulk. It stands nearly 15 feet tall and over 40 feet long, dwarfing everything else on the road. To give you some perspective, a standard heavy-duty truck might have 500 horsepower. The Tractomas is powered by a V12 Caterpillar engine that pumps out nearly 1,000 horsepower, but it's not about speed, it's about torque. This monster features 5 driven axles, a 10x10 configuration, and is designed to pull super heavy loads. We are talking about transformers and power station generators weighing up to 550 US tons. That is equivalent to pulling a line of 40 city buses all at once from a dead stop. When a Tractomas moves, the earth shakes. It is the perfect conclusion to our list because it represents the absolute limit of what a truck can be. It is engineering taken to the absolute extreme. These trucks are custom-built for specific mega-projects, often in South Africa or Australia, moving infrastructure that keeps civilization running. It is almost too big for the road, requiring a fleet of escort vehicles just to move a few miles. The Nicholas Tractomas isn't just a truck, it is a rolling power station that proves nothing is too heavy if you have enough torque. From the stylish Diamond T to the massive Tractomas, these machines prove that history is anything but boring. Which one would you choose to drive? The elegant American classic or the French giant? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through heavy metal history, please hit that like button. It helps us keep the engines running. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more amazing engineering stories. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on the next road trip. Forget everything you know about trucks. We are not talking about your grandfather's pickup. We are talking about mechanical freaks of nature. Have you ever seen a truck that walks over rocks like a spider? Or a van with a 2-stroke engine that smokes like a chimney? From Cold War secrets to 3-wheeled oddities, these are the 10 most bizarre classic trucks that history tried to forget. These machines defy logic, physics, and sanity. You need to stay until the very last second because the engineering gets crazier with every entry. If you love discovering the weirdest machines on Earth, smash that subscribe button right now. Let's dive into the madness. Kicking off this list with an American oddity from the late 1950s that looks like it is wearing a pair of extra glasses. Meet the International Harvester Sightliner. At first glance, you might think the design was a terrible mistake. Why are there 2 extra windows to the bodywork right below the windshield? This wasn't a design flaw, it was a radical attempt to solve a major safety problem. In the tight city streets of the 1950s, drivers in high-cab over trucks could not see pedestrians or small cars directly in front of their massive steel bumpers. Mechanically, the Sightliner was an absolute beast tailored for the U.S. highway system. It was typically powered by the massive V401 or V549 gasoline V8 engines, churning out serious horsepower for its time. Officially known as the ACO series, its distinct compact design was a direct response to strict length regulations. sightliner measured only 48 inches from the bumper to the back of the cab. This ultra-short length allowed trucking companies to haul longer trailers while staying legally within the overall length limits of various states. It was a brilliant, albeit strange example of government regulations dictating automotive design. However, the sightliner did not stick around forever, and there were reasons for its disappearance. Drivers often complained about the excessive heat in the cabin because they were sitting directly on top of a roaring V8 engine with lots of glass letting in the sun. As length regulations relaxed and cab designs improved, the need for those lower sight windows vanished. Today, seeing a sightliner at a classic truck show is an incredibly rare treat. It stands as a testament to a time when American engineers were not afraid to cut holes in a truck just to see if it worked. Crossing the Atlantic Ocean and the Iron Curtain, we find the Barcus B1000. While the Volkswagen bus was becoming a symbol of freedom and surfing in the West, the Barcus was the undisputed workhorse of East Germany. Produced from 1961 all the way until 1991, this van platform did absolutely everything behind the Berlin Wall. It served as an ambulance, a police van, a flatbed truck, and a delivery vehicle. Unlike the rear-engine VW, the Barcus utilized a front-wheel drive layout. This was actually revolutionary for a commercial van, allowing for a remarkably low and flat loading floor for easy cargo access. The engine of the Barcus is where things get truly bizarre by modern American standards. It was powered by a tiny two-stroke three-cylinder engine derived from the Wartburg car. Yes, a smoky two-stroke engine in a one-ton truck. This meant you had to mix oil with the gas, and it produced that signature ring-ding sound and a cloud of blue smoke. With only about 45 horsepower on tap, it was not going anywhere fast, but it was surprisingly torque-heavy. If the engine failed, the design was so simple that two people could literally lift the engine out of the chassis by hand. Despite its underpowered nature, the Barcus B1000 is a cult icon today, representing the ingenuity of engineers working with limited resources. It survived for decades with almost no significant changes, serving as a time capsule of communist engineering. While it lacked the comfort of American vans, it was incredibly durable and easy to fix on the side of the road. Today, collectors import them to the US as unique show cars. Driving one requires patience and a tolerance for noise, but it guarantees you will be the only one at the car meet with a two-stroke van. When the Swedish military needs a truck, they do not mess around with weak designs. Enter the Volvo Laplander series, specifically the C303 model. At first glance, it looks like a brick on wheels. It is arguably one of the boxiest vehicles ever designed. Often nicknamed the Valp or Puppy in its earlier versions, this machine is an absolute monster off-road. It was explicitly designed to transport troops and equipment through the deep snow, frozen lakes, and dense forests of Scandinavia. It is high, narrow, and looks like it might tip over, but its stability is engineering magic. The secret weapon of the Laplander is its portal axles. In a normal American pickup truck, the axle creates a low point in the center of the vehicle that can easily get stuck on rocks or stumps. On the Laplander, the axle tube sits nearly 15 inches above the ground, and a set of gears in the wheel hub transfers the power down to the tire. This gives the truck massive ground clearance without needing monster truck tires. Combined with vacuum-operated differential lockers that can be engaged on the fly, the Laplander can crawl over rocks that would swallow a Jeep Wrangler whole. The driving position is also unique and terrifying. You sit forward of the front axle, meaning you are essentially the bumper. When descending a steep hill, you feel like you are diving face-first into the ground. The Volvo Laplander has gained a legendary status among off-road enthusiasts worldwide for its durability and capability. While they are rare in the United States, they are highly sought after by extreme off-roaders who want a vehicle that is practically unstoppable right out of the factory. It proves that a box on wheels can be the ultimate adventure machine. During World War II, the British Army desperately needed a new general service truck, and Bedford answered the call with the QL. Known affectionately to soldiers as Queen Lizzie, this was Bedford's first ever commercial vehicle designed with four-wheel drive. Over 52,000 were built between 1941 and 1945 to support the Allied war effort. The most striking feature of the QL is its height. The cab sits incredibly high up, perched directly on top of the engine. Climbing into the driver's seat is more like ascending a ladder into a treehouse than getting into a standard military truck. This forward control design maximized cargo space on a relatively short wheelbase, allowing it to carry a 3-ton payload, but it made for a unique driving experience. Because you sat so high and the truck was relatively narrow, the sensation of body roll in corners was absolutely terrifying. Drivers reported that it felt like the truck was going to tip over at any moment, although it rarely did thanks to a heavy chassis. The gearbox was also notorious. Shifting gears required a specific rhythm and a lot of muscle, earning the respect and frustration of thousands of Allied soldiers. Despite its quirky ergonomics, the Bedford QL was incredibly robust and versatile. It carried troops, acted as a fuel tanker, served as a mobile office, and even towed anti-tank guns across North Africa and Europe. It represents the stiff upper lip of British wartime engineering, maybe not comfortable, maybe a bit odd-looking, but it absolutely got the job done when it mattered most. Many survived the war and were converted for civilian use, serving on farms for decades. It is a tall, awkward, but heroic piece of history. If the Bedford QL is a soldier, the Scammell Explorer is a tank in disguise. Built in the 1950s for the British Army, this 6x6 recovery vehicle is a mechanical masterpiece of brute force. It was designed to rescue other tanks and heavy trucks that had gotten stuck or broken down in the field. Visually, it is intimidating, with a massive protruding radiator grille and a purposeful, heavy-set stance. It weighs over 20 tons fully loaded and looks like it could smash through a brick wall without even scratching the paint. The real magic of the Explorer lies underneath the chassis, specifically in the rear suspension. It uses a walking beam system instead of standard springs. The rear wheels are attached to a massive beam that pivots in the center, allowing for insane articulation. One rear wheel can be 2 feet up in the air while the other is buried in a ditch, and both will still have traction. Powering this beast was the legendary Gardner 6LW diesel engine. It wasn't fast. Top speed was maybe 25 miles per hour downhill, but the torque was earth-shattering, allowing it to tow over 100 tons using low gears. Watching a Scammell Explorer move off-road is hypnotic. The rear wheels articulate and crawl over obstacles like a giant mechanical insect. It is a reminder of a time when trucks were over-engineered to last forever rather than designed for comfort or speed. The transmission gate was also gated, requiring skill to navigate, and the steering was unassisted, demanding serious arm strength from the driver. Today, these giants are kept alive by dedicated enthusiasts who appreciate the raw, unfiltered mechanical connection between man and machine. Is it a truck? Is it a go-kart? Is it a table with wheels? It is the M274 truck platform utility, better known to U.S. servicemen as the mechanical mule. Introduced in the late 1950s and used extensively during the Vietnam War, this is the definition of minimalism. The U.S. military wanted a vehicle that could carry heavy loads over rough terrain but was light enough to be dropped by parachute or carried underneath a helicopter. The result was literally a magnesium platform with 4 wheels and an engine underneath, weighing only about 900 pounds. There is no cab, there are no doors, there is not even a real seat, just a flimsy wire basket for the driver. But the engineering is brilliant. The mule features 4-wheel drive and, amazingly, 4-wheel steering. This allowed it to crab walk diagonally and make unbelievably tight turns in the jungle. Even stranger, the steering column could be unlatched and tilted forward to extend the wheelbase virtually. This allowed the driver to walk or crawl in front of the moving vehicle while controlling it, perfect for when you needed to use the mule as a shield in combat. Despite looking like a toy, the mule could carry more than its own weight in cargo, often hauling up to 1,000 pounds of ammo across terrain that would stop a jeep. It carried supplies, mounted recoilless rifles for fire support, and evacuated the wounded. It was eventually phased out in the 1980s for the Humvee, but nothing since has matched its sheer utility-to-weight ratio. It proves that you do not need complex computers or armor plating to be an effective military vehicle. Sometimes you just need a flat surface and four moving wheels. The Dutch are famous for their endless battle against water, but with the DAF YA-126, they decided to fight the terrain itself. Built in the 1950s as a weapons carrier for the Royal Netherlands Army, this truck looks fairly normal from the top down. However, underneath the chassis, it is an engineering freak of nature. Most 404 trucks use a drive shaft down the middle connected to axles at the front and back. The engineers at DAF said no to that conventional wisdom. Instead, they utilized a unique H-drive system derived from armored car technology. In the H-drive layout, there is no differential in the middle of the axle that could get snagged on rocks. Instead, the drive shafts run along the sides of the chassis, powering the wheels through a complex series of gears. But the weirdest feature is definitely the spare wheels. You will notice two spare tires mounted on the sides just behind the front cab. These aren't just for storage, they are actually mounted on free-rotating hubs that hang lower than the chassis. If the truck high centers on a ridge or a bump, these spare wheels act as landing gear, rolling the truck over the obstacle. This brilliant design made the YA-126 nearly unstoppable in uneven terrain. It could drag a one-ton payload through mud that would stop a tank. It's a level of mechanical complexity that you just do not see anymore because it is incredibly expensive to build and maintain. But for a specific moment in history, DAF created the ultimate off-road spider. Today they are popular among European collectors, but finding parts for that insane drivetrain in the United States is a nightmare, making them a rare and fascinating sight on American soil. After World War II, Japan needed to rebuild its economy from the ground up. The streets were narrow, resources were scarce, and businesses needed a cheap way to move goods. Enter the K-truck revolution, led by the charming Mazda K360. Launched in 1959, this three-wheeled truck looks less like a utility vehicle and more like a cartoon character come to life. With its rounded bathtub styling, bug-eye headlights, and friendly two-tone paint jobs, it is undeniably adorable. But do not underestimate it. This little machine helped rebuild the Japanese economy. The K360 was powered by a tiny 3556 EC V-twin air-cooled engine mounted behind the cabin, the same spot you would find an engine in a supercar, technically making it a mid-engine vehicle. It produced a modest 11 to 16 horsepower depending on the year. Driving it was an exercise in balance. With only one wheel at the front, the turning radius was incredibly tight, making it perfect for the alleyways of Tokyo. However, take a corner too fast with an empty bed, and things could get tippy very quickly, requiring a steady hand on the horizontal steering wheel. The cabin was tiny, barely fitting two adults comfortably, but it was a step up from a bicycle or a motorcycle. Over 280,000 units were produced before production ended in 1969, replaced by four-wheeled trucks. Today, the K360 is a rare collector's item, celebrated not for its power but for its style and historical significance. It proved that you do not need big horsepower to make a big impact. While Americans were driving massive V8s, this little tricycle was carrying the weight of a nation's recovery on its small bed. You know the Vespa scooter, the symbol of Italian style, romance, and freedom. But did you know it has a hard-working brother? This is the Vespa Ape, pronounced ape, which means bee in Italian, just as Vespa means wasp. Conceived by Enrico Piaggio right after the war, the idea was simple: take the front half of a scooter and weld a cargo box to the back half. It was the elegant solution for Italian merchants who could not afford a full-size truck, but needed to haul wine, cheese, and construction materials through ancient, narrow streets. The Ape is primitive but effective. The driver sits on a saddle, in early models, or a simple bench, steering with handlebars just like a motorcycle. The engine is a small displacement two-stroke, often ranging from 50 cc to roughly 200 cc. It buzzes angrily as it carries loads that look physically impossible for its size, often hauling up to 1,000 pounds or more. Over the decades, the Ape evolved, gaining a proper enclosed cab to protect the driver from the rain, but the basic three-wheel architecture has remained the same for over 70 years. It is one of the longest-running production vehicles in history because nothing else can do exactly what it does. It can squeeze through gaps that would stop a bicycle. In Italy, seeing an old man navigating a vertical cobblestone hill in a rusted Ape loaded with firewood is a common sight. Recently, they have become trendy in the US as mobile coffee bars or Prosecco vans at weddings. It is the ultimate fusion of motorcycle freedom and truck utility, proving that three wheels are sometimes better than four. We end our list with one more survivor from East Germany, the multi-car M22. While the Barcus was the delivery van, the multi-car was the heavy-duty industrial worker, shrunk down to miniature size. Produced in the 1960s and 70s, the M22 looks like someone put a full-size dump truck into a shrinking machine. It has a tiny single-person enclosed cab sitting right next to a noisy engine. It was ubiquitous in Eastern Bloc factories, airports, and construction sites, handling the dirty work that required a compact footprint. The M22 was powered by an air-cooled V-twin diesel engine producing about 15 horsepower. It was definitely not built for speed. Its top speed was barely 15 to 18 miles per hour. It was built for torque and versatility. The multi in the name referred to the various attachments available: dump beds, snowplows, street sweepers, and ladders. Despite its small size, it could carry a payload of nearly 2 tons, which is mind-blowing for a vehicle of its dimensions. The controls were cramped, and the ride was harsh, but it never quit. Amazingly, unlike many other East German manufacturers that vanished after unification, the multi-car company survived the fall of the Berlin Wall and is still in business today, making modern utility vehicles. But the M22 remains the classic icon, a noisy, smoky, shaking, but incredibly reliable little worker. It is a favorite among collectors of oddball machinery who enjoy driving a truck that tops out at the speed of a bicycle but can pull a house. It is the perfect end to our list of weird wonders. From the window-heavy sightliner to the three-wheeled wonders, these 10 trucks prove that automotive history is absolutely insane. We have seen the wildest designs solving the toughest problems. Now it is your turn. Which mechanical oddity was your favorite? Would you pick the rock-crawling Volvo or the tiny tricycle? Comment down below right now. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next video. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to the channel. Have you ever looked at a vintage truck and thought, what on earth were the engineers thinking? We are not talking about your average pickup or highway semi. We are talking about the forgotten giants, the daring design experiments, and the mechanical oddities that time almost erased. Today, we are unveiling 10 of the most bizarre vintage trucks and heavy machines you have likely never seen before. From fire trucks powered by literal jet engines to Soviet off-road beasts that defy the laws of physics, these vehicles are the definition of strange. Which one of these mechanical marvels is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive into the weird world of heavy machinery. Let's start our list with something that sounds more like an aircraft than a fire truck. In the swinging 60s, American LaFrance wanted to solve a critical problem: speed. Meet the Aero Chief. This wasn't just a truck. It was a vision of the future powered by a genuine Boeing gas turbine engine. Yes, you heard that right. A jet engine in a fire truck. The design was incredibly sleek and aerodynamic, featuring a low profile and a wide, expansive windshield that looked like it belonged on a spaceship rather than a municipal vehicle. It represented the jet age optimism where engineers believed turbines were the future of all transportation. The turbine engine offered an immense power-to-weight ratio, producing 325 horsepower but with massive torque, allowing the 30,000-pound Aero Chief to accelerate from 0 to 50 miles per hour in roughly 30 seconds, twice as fast as the diesel trucks of the day. It produced a distinctive high-pitched whine that sounded like a plane taking off, alerting everyone for miles. However, the engineering reality was harsh. The exhaust heat was so intense it could melt asphalt or singe pedestrians standing too close behind it. Plus, the engine guzzled fuel at an alarming rate, making it expensive to idle at emergency scenes. Despite its futuristic appeal, the Aero Chief didn't take over the world as predicted. The high cost of maintenance and the practical dangers of running a jet engine on city streets meant only a handful were ever built and sold to fire departments. Today, seeing one is a rare treat for automotive enthusiasts. It stands as a bold experiment in American history, proving that sometimes engineers are willing to try absolutely anything in the name of performance. But if you think a jet-powered fire truck is wild, wait until you see the next machine. It looks less like a truck and more like a sci-fi fortress. If the Aero Chief was the jet age, the Rosenbauer Simba is pure science fiction brought to life. Designed specifically for airport rescue and firefighting, ARFF, this Austrian-made beast is one of the most visually striking crash tenders ever built. When you see the Simba 6X6, you don't see a standard truck. You see a geometric fortress on wheels. Its angular composite body and massive glass cockpit give it an appearance that is both intimidating and incredibly futuristic. It looks like a vehicle designed to explore the surface of Mars rather than patrol a runway in Frankfurt or Munich. Underneath that alien exterior lies a marvel of heavy engineering. The Simba is built on a massive Titan chassis with an 6x6 drivetrain. It carries over 3,000 gallons of water and foam, ready to unleash a torrent capable of extinguishing jet fuel fires in seconds. Powered by massive twin V8 engines churning out over 1,200 horsepower, this 40-ton giant can accelerate from 0 to 50 miles per hour in under 25 seconds, ensuring it reaches any crash site rapidly. The driver sits centrally in a wide cockpit with panoramic visibility, which is essential for maneuvering around burning aircraft and coordinating rescue teams. The Rosenbauer Simba set the global standard for airport safety vehicles in the 1980s and 90s. It combined raw power with advanced composite materials, proving that form and function can coexist in the most extreme environments. While newer models have replaced it, the original Simba remains a legend. From the wide-open runways, we now squeeze into the narrow streets of Britain to meet a truck with a very peculiar three-penny face. Navigating the tight, winding streets of post-war Britain required a special kind of vehicle, and the Austin FG was the unique answer. Launched in 1959, this truck quickly earned the nickname the Three-Penny Bit, because its angular cab resembled the British 12-sided coin used at the time. But this weird shape wasn't just for looks. It was a brilliant safety feature designed for urban environments. The distinct angles allowed the designers to place additional windows in places no other truck had them, giving the driver unparalleled visibility in crowded city centers. The design featured curbside windows located low down in the front footwells on both sides. These small glass panels allowed the driver to see the pavement clearly, spotting children, pedestrians, or cyclists in what would normally be a dangerous blind spot. The doors were another quirk. They were rear-hinged suicide doors that were cut at an angle specifically so they wouldn't project beyond the width of the body when opened. This allowed the driver to step out easily in narrow alleyways without swinging the door wide open into oncoming traffic. Mechanically, the Austin FG was a true workhorse, usually powered by a reliable BMC petrol or diesel engine. However, the engine was mounted practically inside the cabin between the seats, making it incredibly noisy and hot for the driver. Drivers often joke that the cab was the heater. Despite the discomfort, its maneuverability was unmatched. It delivered everything from coal to bread across the UK for decades, becoming an unsung hero of the working class. The Austin FG was a British icon, but it wasn't the only one with a strange nose. Our next truck looks like it ran into a wall and just kept going. Staying in the UK, we encountered the Bedford CA. the vehicle that arguably revolutionized the light commercial van market from 1952 to 1969. The CA face you can't forget, a distinctively short, pug-nosed bonnet that gives it a friendly, almost cartoonish appearance. This semi-forward control design is groundbreaking because it maximized cargo space in the back while keeping the overall vehicle length compact. This made it the perfect tool for the delivery boom of the 1950s, allowing businesses to transport more goods with a smaller footprint. The Bedford CA was famously versatile and came in various chassis lengths. It was the base for the iconic Dormobile camper van, introducing thousands of families to the joys of the van life long before it became a popular hashtag on social media. One of its most beloved features was the sliding front doors. Unlike standard hinge doors, these slid back along the body, allowing drivers to hop in and out quickly during multi-stop routes. This feature made it an absolute favorite for milkmen, postal workers, and laundry services across the country. Under the hood was a robust inline-4 engine that was easy to repair and cheap to maintain. The Bedford CA featured independent front suspension, which gave it a surprisingly car-like ride compared to the rigid trucks of its era. While it might look quaint today with its split windshield and tiny 13-inch wheels, it was the backbone of British small business and paved the way for the modern Ford Transit. Now, let's cross the Atlantic to the land of wide highways, where one truck decided that aerodynamics was just a suggestion. In the late 1950s, American trucking regulations placed strict limits on the overall length of a rig, comprising both the tractor and the trailer. To maximize the trailer length and increase profits, engineers had to drastically shrink the truck itself. Enter the 1959 GMC Cracker Box. Officially known as the DLR 8000 series, this truck earned its nickname because it looked exactly like a square aluminum cracker box. There were absolutely no curves, just a flat, vertical face pushing against the wind, a design that prioritized dimensions over drag coefficient. The Cracker Box was an exercise in extreme space saving. The cabin measured only 48 inches from the front bumper to the back of the cab. This ultra-short bumper-to-back-of-cab dimension allowed haulers to pull longer trailers while staying legal. However, the ride was notoriously rough. Sitting directly over the front axle in a lightweight aluminum box meant the driver felt every bump, pothole, and pebble in the road. It was also incredibly loud and hot, with the massive Detroit diesel engine roaring right beneath the driver's seat with minimal insulation. Despite the discomfort, the Cracker Box was a marvel of lightweight construction. The extensive use of aluminum in the cab and frame allowed for heavier payloads, making it highly profitable for fleet owners. It featured a unique air suspension system in later models to try and mitigate the harsh ride, but it remained a challenge to drive. It represents a specific era in American logistics where efficiency trumped driver comfort every time. The Cracker Box was tough, but it had a rival. A rival with a bulldog on the hood and a reputation for being absolutely unkillable. When you think of American trucking, you think of Mack. In the cab-over-engine era of the 1960s and 70s, the Mack F model was the undisputed king of the fleet. Produced from the 1960s through the early 80s, the F model was built like a tank. It featured a flat nose, a massive radiator grille, and that iconic gold or chrome bulldog ornament leading the way. While it shared the flat front aesthetic of the Cracker Box, the Mack F model was heavier, sturdier, and built for the punishing long haul across the interstate highway system. The F model was famous for introducing the revolutionary Maxidine engine and Maxitorque transmission combination. Before this, drivers had to shift gears constantly to keep the engine in its power band. The Mack powertrain offered incredible low-end torque, meaning drivers had to shift gears far less often, a huge relief in the days of manual trucking. The interior was Spartan, functional, and tight, with a dashboard made of flat metal sheets and simple gauges. To the old-school trucker, it wasn't luxury, it was a reliable home office. This truck became a pop culture icon, appearing in numerous movies and TV shows as the quintessential big rig. It wasn't the most comfortable ride, and climbing into the high cab using the wheel hub as a step was a workout in itself, but it earned the respect of everyone on the road. The Mac F model is a testament to the slogan "built like a Mack truck," surviving long after its competitors rusted away. Mac had the East Coast locked down, but out west, another giant was rising. A truck that turned heavy haulage into an art form. If the Mac was the Bulldog, the Kenworth K100 was the Eagle. Originating from the West Coast, Kenworth built trucks that were custom-made to conquer the Rocky Mountains. The K100 Cabover is perhaps one of the most beautiful trucks ever designed. With its flat face, dual headlights, and often elaborate paint schemes, it became the poster child for the American trucking boom of the 1970s. It was versatile, used for everything from logging in the Pacific Northwest to cross-country freight hauling. The K100 was designed with the long-haul driver in mind. Unlike the Spartan Mac, Kenworth focused on comfort and customization. In 1976, they introduced the Aerodyne sleeper cab, which featured a raised roof with skylights. This was a game-changer, offering unprecedented standing room and comfort, turning the cab into a mobile apartment rather than just a seat. Drivers could finally stand up to change their clothes, a luxury that was previously unheard of in cabover designs. This truck represents the golden age of trucking culture, the era of CB radios, convoys, and independent owner-operators. Its bolted frame and aluminum cab construction meant it was lightweight, yet incredibly strong. Today, a restored Kenworth K100 commands high prices and turns heads at every truck show, proving that style and substance can go hand in hand. While Kenworth ruled the highways, our next vehicle was quietly revolutionizing how packages arrived at your doorstep. It's the grandfather of the delivery van. You might not know the name, but you have definitely seen the shape. The Grumman-Olson Curbside is the blueprint for every UPS or FedEx truck you see today. Its origin is fascinating. Grumman was primarily an aircraft manufacturer, famous for building fighter planes in World War II. After the war, they decided to apply their aviation expertise to the automotive world. The result was a delivery vehicle body made entirely of aluminum, a material they knew better than anyone else. The Curbside was revolutionary because aluminum does not rust. In the snowy Rust Belt states, steel trucks would rot away in a few years due to road salt, but the aluminum Grumman kept going forever. Its design was purely functional: a sliding door for easy entry, a high roof so the driver could stand up and sort packages, and a thick rear bumper to handle city traffic. Built typically on a reliable Chevrolet chassis, it combined easy-to-find mechanical parts with an aerospace-grade body that was light and durable. These vans were virtually indestructible. Many produced in the 1950s and 60s are still on the road today, often converted into trendy food trucks or mobile boutiques. The Curbside changed the logistics industry by proving that a higher upfront cost for an aluminum body paid off with decades of service life. It's a humble, boxy hero that literally delivered the modern economy to our front doors. So far, we've stuck to the roads, but what if there are no roads? Our next contender is a tiny Soviet machine that can go where no truck has gone before. Now we travel behind the Iron Curtain to examine the Louis 969Me, often known as the Volin. While it looks like a toy Jeep or a small utility vehicle, do not let its diminutive size fool you. This was a Soviet creation designed for the harshest rural conditions where paved roads simply did not exist. It is widely considered one of the most capable off-road vehicles of its size ever built, serving farmers, geologists, and the military alike. The Luaz is bizarre in its engineering choices. It is powered by a small air-cooled V4 engine mounted at the front, the same 40-horsepower engine used in the Zaporozhye city car. However, it features portal gear axles similar to the massive Unimog, which give it incredible ground clearance for such small wheels. It has independent suspension on all wheels and a locking rear differential. Its military sibling, the Luaz 967, was even amphibious, designed to float across rivers. The civilian 969 NEM kept the off-road DNA, capable of crawling through mud that would swallow a modern Land Rover whole. It's crude, noisy, and vibrates like a jackhammer, but it is unstoppable. The interior is essentially bare metal, and the comfort level is non-existent. Yet, in the rural villages of Eastern Europe, the Luaz is a legend. It serves as a reminder of Soviet philosophy. It doesn't have to be pretty, and it doesn't have to be comfortable. It just has to work where nothing else can. The Luaz is a tiny off-road warrior, but our final truck is a gargantuan monster. A 12-cylinder giant that eats terrain for breakfast. We finish our list with the undisputed king of off-road heavy trucks, the Czechoslovakian Tatra 111. Produced during and after W2, the Tatra 111 is an engineering masterpiece that defies convention. While most trucks use a flexible ladder frame, the Tatra uses a unique backbone tube chassis. The driveshaft runs inside a massive central structural tube, protecting it from damage, while the swing axles move independently. This allows the Tatra to keep its wheels on the ground over the roughest boulders and ditches imaginable without twisting the frame. But the real magic is the engine. It is powered by a massive 14.8-liter V12 diesel engine that is entirely air-cooled. That's right, no radiator, no water pump, no coolant to freeze in the bitter Siberian winter or boil over in the desert heat. This made the Tatra 111 incredibly reliable in extreme climates. It produced around 180 horsepower, which was immense for its time and could carry payloads of over 10 tons across terrain where men found it hard to walk. It was so vital to the construction of the Soviet Union that a monument of it stands in Magadan, Siberia. The sight of a Tatra 111 with its wheels angled inward, positive camber, when unladen is unforgettable. It is a truck that was built to last forever, and many are still running today, maintained by devoted enthusiasts. It is the perfect example of how thinking outside the box, or in this case, inside the tube, can create a legend. From the jet-powered Aero Chief to the unbreakable Tatra 111, these 10 vehicles prove that automotive history is full of wild experiments. Whether born from war or pure imagination, each machine has a unique story. Now, I want to hear from you. Which truck was the weirdest? Would you drive the tiny Luaz or the massive Rosenbauer Simba? Drop your choice in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please smash that like button and subscribe for more mechanical marvels. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Forget everything you know about trucks. You think they are just boring tools with 4 wheels and a bed. You are dead wrong. We are about to uncover the true freaks of automotive history. Imagine a truck made entirely of wood and leather. Picture a massive beast with an engine that screams but has absolutely no radiator. Or a 3-wheeled nightmare that threatens to flip over if you turn the steering wheel too fast. These aren't sci-fi movies. This is history. Which one is a genius invention and which one is a death trap? You have to watch until number 1 to believe your eyes. Smash that subscribe button right now because we are going full throttle into the 10 weirdest trucks ever made. Let's kick things off with something that looks less like a truck and more like a motorcycle having an identity crisis. This is the Tempo Handseat. Originating in Germany right after the war, this 3-wheeled oddity was the definition of desperate innovation to get the economy moving again. The most striking feature is undeniably that single front wheel. But look closer at the mechanics. The engine isn't under the seat or in the back. The entire powertrain, a tiny 400cc 2-stroke motor producing just 15 horsepower, is mounted directly on top of the front fork. It looks incredibly fragile, yet it was the workhorse for thousands of businesses. Driving a Handseat was a physical workout and a chaotic lesson in physics. Because the vibrating engine sat heavily on the front wheel, when you turned the steering wheel, you were physically swinging the entire engine assembly left or right. And here is the scary part. The center of gravity was frighteningly high. If you took a corner too fast while the cargo bed was empty, the truck would literally try to somersault. It was notorious for tipping over on sharp turns, yet it offered a top speed of around 30 miles per hour, which was terrifyingly fast for a tricycle loaded with bricks or produce. Despite its comical appearance and the constant threat of rolling over, the Tempo Hanseat was so simple and cheap that it became a legend. While Germany eventually moved on to four wheels, the tooling for this truck was sold to India, where it evolved into the Bajaj auto rickshaws. So, in a way, this weird German tricycle never really died. It just emigrated. But if you think driving a three-wheeler is scary, wait until you see our next entry. We are moving from three wheels to four, with a truck from East Germany that smoked like a chimney and ran on a mixture of oil and hope. Crossing the Iron Curtain into East Germany, we find the Framo V901. While the US was building massive V8 pickups, the engineers in the GDR were working with severe limitations. The Framo V901 is a fascinating study in communist minimalism. Produced in the 1950s, it looks somewhat charming today with its classic curves and separate headlights. However, make no mistake, this was a bare-bones utility vehicle designed for a world where steel and fuel were scarce. It served as everything from a delivery van to a minibus and even an ambulance, proving that necessity is indeed the mother of invention. Under the hood sat a minuscule 900cc three-cylinder two-stroke engine. Yes, a two-stroke truck engine. That meant every time you fired it up, you were greeted with the distinctive ring-ding-ding sound and a thick cloud of blue smoke. It produced roughly 24 to 28 horsepower. To put that in perspective, most modern riding lawnmowers have more kick than this truck. It struggled to reach 50 miles per hour, and if you were hauling a heavy load of coal uphill, you could probably walk faster alongside it. The cabin was noisy, hot, and smelled permanently of burnt oil. Despite its lack of power, the V901 has gained a cult following today among vintage enthusiasts. It represents a time when mechanics were simple enough that you could fix your engine with a hammer and a wrench on the side of the road. It's a cute, smoky piece of history that paved the way for the Barkas van, but we are done with small and cute. Let's jump from the tiny 900cc Framo to a French monster that was built to move mountains, featuring an engine so big it could power a small ship. They say everything is bigger in Texas, but clearly they never saw the French-made Willem TG 200. This wasn't just a truck, it was a land train. Produced by Willem, a company famous for heavy-duty haulers, the TG 200 was the undisputed king of the road in the 1960s. The TG stood for Tracteur Géant, giant tractor, and it lived up to the name. This 8A4 beast was designed specifically for convoy exceptionnel, or exceptional convoys, tasked with hauling super heavy loads like electrical transformers and locomotive parts across the country. Just look at the scale of this thing. The truck itself weighed over 40 tons without a load. Under that massive locomotive-like hood, it was often powered by a Detroit diesel V16 engine or a massive Cummins power plant, generating the immense torque needed to pull loads exceeding 200 tons. The design is unforgettable, a flat, imposing vertical face with a windshield that seems to look down on everything else on the road. The sheer number of tires needed to distribute the weight of the loads it carried is mind-boggling, turning the asphalt into a mere suggestion of a road. Driving this Leviathan required incredible skill. There was limited power steering assist compared to today. It was pure muscle and mechanical leverage. The Willem TG 200 remains a symbol of industrial might, a dinosaur from an era before modular, self-propelled trailers took over the heavy lifting. It is a machine of pure brute force that commands respect. Speaking of unique engines, our next truck didn't just have a big engine. It had an engine that didn't need a single drop of water to stay cool, screaming down the highway with a sound you will never forget. If you were in Europe in the 1960s and heard a loud screaming roar coming down the road, it was probably a Magirus Deutz Rundhauber. The nickname Rundhauber translates to round hood, referring to that distinctively curved alligator-style nose that gave it a friendly yet tough appearance. But the real magic wasn't the shape, it was the engineering philosophy. While the rest of the world was fussing with radiators, water pumps, hoses, and coolant leaks, Magirus Deutz simply said, "Why bother?" and removed the cooling system entirely. These trucks were powered by legendary air-cooled diesel engines, available in V8 or even V12 configurations. That's right, no water. They used massive high-speed fans to blast air directly over the finned cylinders to keep them cool. This made them incredibly reliable in extreme climates, whether it was the freezing cold of the Alps where water would freeze, or the scorching heat of the Sahara where water would boil. The Magirus didn't care. As long as there was air, it would run. The sound is iconic, a distinct high-pitched clatter that is music to the ears of truck enthusiasts. The Rundhauber was tough as nails, becoming the preferred choice for fire trucks and construction vehicles across the globe. The rounded hood wasn't just for style, it allowed for better visibility on rough terrain compared to the square noses of the competition. It represents German engineering at its most pragmatic. From the noisy construction sites of Germany, let's travel to the quiet, majestic wilderness of America for a vehicle that is as yellow as the sun and holds a special place in U.S. history. This next entry is a Hollywood star. You might recognize the white 706 as the Jammer buses from Yellowstone National Park. Built by the White Motor Company in the late 1930s, these vehicles are perhaps the most beautiful fusion of a rugged truck chassis and a passenger coach ever created. They were designed specifically for the National Park Service to transport tourists in style through the American wilderness. Painted a bright, distinctive yellow, they were made to stand out against the greenery of the forests, becoming an icon of the park experience. The most distinct feature is the canvas rollback top. In an era before panoramic glass roofs, this was high-tech luxury. The driver could roll the canvas roof back, allowing passengers to gaze up at the towering peaks of the Tetons or the geysers of Yellowstone without obstruction. Powered by a reliable inline-six engine, they weren't fast, climbing steep mountain passes at maybe 25 to 30 miles per hour, but speed wasn't the point. The point was the view. Passengers sat on leather bench seats, experiencing the park with the wind in their hair and the smell of pine trees filling the cabin. But why are they called jammers? It's because of the non-synchronized manual transmissions. The drivers had to double clutch and often jam the gears to get them to shift on the steep mountain grades, creating a distinct grinding sound. These buses are built on the rugged white model 706 truck chassis, giving them the durability to handle rough park roads for nearly a century. But while the white 706 had a classic long nose, truck designers were starting to realize that sometimes the best place for the driver is right on top of the engine. Before the flat-faced trucks we see today dominated the highways, there was a transition period, and the Kenworth Bullnose is the king of that era. Produced in the early 1950s, this was Kenworth's cab-over-engine COE design, but it didn't look like a brick wall. It had style. The front end was rounded, featuring a distinctive bubble shape that earned it the Bullnose nickname. This truck represents the golden age of American trucking, where design flair met industrial utility on the newly formed interstate system. Due to strict length regulations on highways back then, manufacturers had to squash the cabin to maximize trailer space. Kenworth did it with elegance, often packing a Cummins diesel engine producing over 200 horsepower inside. However, the driver paid the price. The engine was literally inside the cab with you, covered by a large metal doghouse between the seats. It was hot, noisy, and cramped. If you wanted to check the oil, you had to disassemble parts of the interior. There was no tilting mechanism for the cab yet. Despite the maintenance nightmare, the Bullnose was the chariot of the American road warrior. Seeing a restored Bullnose today is a rare treat, capturing the romance of the open road before aerodynamics turned everything into a wedge. It commands high prices at auctions and is beloved for its Art Deco curves. But the problem of accessing the engine in these flat-front trucks was a genuine nightmare for mechanics, until our next contender invented a sci-fi solution that changed trucking forever. The White Motor Company strikes again, but this time with something that looked like it drove straight out of a 1950s sci-fi comic. This is the White 3000. At first glance, it looks like a futuristic, low-slung pug. The cabin sits incredibly low to the ground, ahead of the front wheels, giving the driver a panoramic view of the road that was unmatched at the time. It was marketed for inner-city deliveries because you could spot pedestrians right in front of the bumper. It usually ran on a Mustang 6-cylinder gas engine, perfect for city hauling. But the real party trick of the White 3000 was the power lift cab. Remember how hard it was to work on the Kenworth Bullnose? Well, White solved it. With the turn of a key, an electric actuator would tilt the entire cabin forward, exposing the engine completely. This was revolutionary. Mechanics loved it. No more crawling through grease or taking apart the dashboard. The truck literally bowed down to you. It was the first time this technology was successfully mass-produced, setting the standard for modern cab-over trucks. The White 3000 became a favorite for beer trucks, garbage trucks, and fuel tankers across America. Its futuristic, rounded Art Deco styling makes it one of the most collectible vintage trucks today. It proved that a work truck could be smart, ergonomic, and incredibly cool-looking. From hauling beer and trash in the city, let's move to a truck that hauled something much sweeter and came with a sound every kid in California knew by heart. If you grew up in California between the 1930s and the 1960s, this vehicle brings tears of nostalgia to your eyes. The Helms Bakery truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was a rolling institution. Whether built on a twin coach or the iconic Divco chassis, these trucks were painted in a creamy ivory color and did not sell their goods in stores. They came to you. They were the Uber Eats of the mid-20th century, but with way more class and fresh donuts. The truck was custom designed for one purpose, selling donuts, bread, and cookies door to door. The driver, known as the helmsman, would blow a distinctive whistle, toot toot, that signaled the neighborhood kids to come running. But the engineering quirk here was the storage. The back wasn't just an empty cargo hold. It was lined with beautiful custom wooden drawers filled with fresh pastries. These were stand-drive vans, allowing the driver to easily jump in and out hundreds of times a day while driving at low neighborhood speeds. Mechanically, they were simple, reliable, and not built for speed, rarely exceeding 40 miles per hour. But culturally, they were a heavyweight. They represent a lost era of personalized service where the bakery came to your curb. The smell of fresh bread wafting from these trucks is a core memory for millions of Americans. The Helms truck was all about clever storage, but our next van reinvented the entire architecture of the automobile, predicting the future of the minivan decades early. You might think the minivan was invented in the 1980s by Chrysler, but you'd be wrong. Meet the grandfather of the modern minivan, the DKW Schnellester, or Rapid Transporter. Post-war Germany needed a utility vehicle, and DKW delivered something radically advanced. While everyone else was using rear-wheel drive with a long drive shaft running under the floor, DKW put the engine and the drive wheels at the very front. This was a front-wheel drive van in 1949, an absolute rarity. Why does that matter? Because it allowed the rear floor to be completely flat and incredibly low, just 16 inches off the ground. You could load cargo almost directly from the curb without lifting it high. It was a packaging miracle. Later versions were powered by a 3-cylinder, 2-stroke engine producing around 42 horsepower. It wasn't fast, topping out at roughly 60 miles per hour, but the layout was pure genius. The wheels were pushed to the absolute corners of the vehicle, maximizing interior space. The Schnellester looked like a loaf of bread on wheels, with a short, stubby hood and a wide stance. It was weird, yes, but it predicted the future of cargo vans. Every modern front-wheel drive delivery van owes a debt to this little German oddball. It showed that moving the mechanical bits out of the way creates more room for business. But if you think metal is the only way to build a car, you're in for a shock with our number 1 pick, which used materials usually reserved for furniture. And finally, at number 1, we have the van that proves size isn't everything. Meet the Lloyd LT600. This van comes from a brand with one of the weirdest nicknames in history, the Leukoplast Bomber or Band-Aid Bomber. Why? Because the earlier cars from Lloyd were literally made of wood frames covered in fabric vinyl due to steel shortages. While this LT600 model eventually upgraded to a steel body, it never lost its toy-like soul and lightweight construction. It is impossibly small. It looks less like a truck and more like a shrunken 1950s wagon. Under the hood, it was powered by a tiny 600cc air-cooled two-cylinder engine producing a whopping 19 horsepower. Yes, 19 horsepower. It weighed only about 1/400 lbs. It was slow, barely reaching 50 miles per hour downhill, and it had suicide doors that opened backward. Yet, for many small businesses in Europe, this was their workhorse, a step up from a bicycle but cheaper than a real truck. The LT600 is the ultimate example of micro-trucking. It bridged the gap between a motorcycle and a real van. Today, seeing one next to a modern Ford Transit is hilarious. It looks like it could fit inside the cargo hold of a modern truck. It is bizarre, it is rare, and it is undoubtedly the weirdest, bravest little truck on our list. It reminds us that sometimes the strangest solutions are the ones that get the job done when times are tough. From the massive land trains of France to the tiny wooden vans of Germany, we have seen that the history of trucking is anything but boring. These mechanical oddities remind us that innovation often starts with a strange idea. Now, I have a challenge for you. Which of these trucks would you trust to survive a cross-country road trip today? Drop your choice in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through automotive history, please smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Stop scrolling. Everything you know about trucks is wrong. We aren't talking about Fords or Chevys here. Imagine a truck that looks like a spaceship, another that drives while you stand up, and a military beast that actually swims through rivers. These aren't sci-fi movies. These are real monsters from history that defy every law of physics and logic. Why would anyone build a truck with only 3 wheels, or one that bends in the middle? Today we are exposing 10 of the most bizarre, dangerous, and mind-blowing trucks ever made. You need to watch until the very last second to believe they exist. Hit that subscribe button right now and do not look away, because this ride is about to get extremely weird, and trust me, you are not ready for the 6-wheeled nightmare waiting at number 1. We start our journey in post-war Japan with a vehicle that looks less like a truck and more like a rolling log. Meet the Mazda T2000. When you first look at it, your brain struggles to comprehend the proportions. It is incredibly long, with the longest version stretching over 20 feet in length, yet it balances precariously on just 3 wheels. This wasn't a mistake, it was a necessity. In the tight, narrow streets of recovering Japan, maneuverability was king. The 3-wheel configuration allowed for a much tighter turning radius than any 4-wheeler could dream of, making it the ultimate urban workhorse. Don't let the quirky tricycle look fool you. This machine was an absolute beast in its category. Under the cabin, or rather inside the cabin with you, sat a robust 121 cubic inch, 2.0 liter, water-cooled 4-cylinder engine. This was a significant jump in power compared to its smaller predecessors. The T2000 was the undisputed king of the auto rickshaw class, capable of hauling a payload of roughly 4,400 lbs, 2 tons. It could hit speeds of around 60 mph, which, given that you are balancing on one front wheel, must have felt absolutely terrifying. It was heavy-duty hauling with motorcycle dynamics. Driving the Mazda T2000 was an experience completely unique to this era. The cabin was sparse, loud, and offered zero crash protection, but it provided an unobstructed view of the road because you were sitting directly on top of the front wheel. It represents a specific moment in history where utility completely trumped aesthetics. While they look alien to us now, in the 1960s and early 70s, these blue giants were building the infrastructure of a nation. Today, seeing one is a rare treat, a reminder of when Mazda was building the backbone of industry before they became famous for sports cars. Crossing the Atlantic to the United Kingdom, we find the Scamel Scarab, a vehicle with a name as distinctive as its shape. Developed in 1948, the Scarab was designed to be the successor to the literal horse-drawn carts still used in British rail yards. The engineers needed a mechanical replacement that could maneuver exactly like a horse. The result was this snub-nosed, three-wheeled tractor unit. With a payload capacity ranging from 6,700 to 13,000 lbs depending on the model, it was a serious industrial tool packaged in a toy-like body, dominating the narrow alleyways of London. The true magic of the Scarab lay in its front wheel configuration. It could rotate a full 360 degrees, allowing the truck to spin within its own length. Imagine the utility of that in a crowded city center. You could practically parallel park it sideways. The cabin was mounted directly over the engine, usually a side-valve gas engine or a Perkins diesel, which meant the driver was intimately acquainted with the heat and noise. It wasn't built for driver comfort. It was built to move freight from trains to local businesses as efficiently as physically possible. What makes the Scarab truly bizarre to modern eyes is its coupling system. It used an innovative automatic coupling gear that allowed the driver to hook up a trailer without ever leaving the cab, a feature that was revolutionary for driver efficiency at the time. Despite its somewhat comical appearance, the Scarab was incredibly durable. Thousands were produced, and they remained in active service well into the 1960s. Watching a Scarab in motion is like watching a dance. It scurries around with an agility that defies its industrial purpose, a brilliantly British solution to a logistical problem. Now we leave the realm of utility and enter the mind of a mad genius. Luigi Colani was not a truck manufacturer. He was a visionary industrial designer who believed that nature held the perfect shapes. He detested the boxy, brick-like shape of modern semi-trucks, arguing that they were aerodynamic disasters that wasted fuel. So, starting in the late 70s, he created a series of concept trucks, most notably the Colani 2001, based on heavy-duty Mercedes-Benz chassis. These weren't just drawings, they were fully functional prototypes that looked like they drove straight off the set of a sci-fi blockbuster. The design is absolutely stunning and shocking. The driver's cabin looks like the cockpit of a fighter jet or the eye of a giant insect. It is circular, featuring a massive round windshield with a rotating three-blade wiper that looks like a propeller. The entire front end is sculpted to slice through the air, claiming to reduce fuel consumption by up to 30% at highway speeds. The driver sat high up in a central position, surrounded by glass, piloting the vehicle more than driving it. It was organic design, bio-design, applied to heavy industry in a way no one had ever dared before. However, despite their futuristic looks and proven aerodynamic efficiency, the industry never adopted them. Why? Because they were impractical for everything else. The bizarre, elongated nose reduced the legal length available for cargo, made engine access a nightmare for mechanics, and was incredibly expensive to manufacture. Not spaceships. Yet, the Colani trucks remain some of the most fascinating vehicles ever seen. This was one of the very few trucks to use the Volkswagen Beetle's 1100cc, approx 67 cubic inch engine, but it placed it in the front, driving the front wheels. This front-wheel drive, FWD layout was actually a stroke of genius for a utility vehicle. Because there was no drive shaft running to the back wheels, the cargo bed could be extremely low and flat, making it incredibly easy to load heavy goods by hand. With only 25 horsepower on tap, it wasn't going anywhere fast. Top speed was barely 50 mph, but it could carry a surprising amount of weight. It was the perfect delivery vehicle for the narrow cobblestone streets of Europe. However, this success created a rivalry with Volkswagen itself. Volkswagen realized the Tempo Matador was a direct competitor to their own upcoming Type 2 transporter, the VW bus. So they cut off the supply of engines. Tempo was forced to scramble and switch to other engines, primarily Austin motors, which changed the design of the front end. But the original VW-powered Matadors remain the holy grail for collectors. The driving position is bizarrely forward, sitting right over the front axle with a horizontal steering wheel. It looks friendly, harmless, and slightly confused, a fascinating footnote in history where the VW engine almost became the standard for front-wheel drive trucks. If you thought the Mazda T2000 was the only three-wheeler on this list, think again. Germany had its own fascination with the tripod layout, and the Goliath Goalie was the last of its kind. Produced by the Borgward Group in the late 1950s, the Goalie was a desperate attempt to keep the cheap three-wheeled commercial vehicle alive. Unlike its chain-driven predecessors, the Goalie featured a more advanced shaft drive system, sending power to the front wheel. The design is stark, utilitarian, and dangerously simple, looking like a metal box balanced on a tricycle. The Goalie was powered by a tiny 30 cubic inch, 500cc, two-cylinder, two-stroke engine. If you know engines, you know that means blue smoke and a very distinct ring-ding-ding noise echoing through the streets. With about 15 horsepower, it had a payload of roughly 2,000 lbs, which is impressive relative to its size, but stability was always a concern. While it was fine for low-speed city deliveries, taking a corner too fast in a fully loaded Goliath Goalie was a recipe for a rollover. It was the budget option for the small business owner who couldn't quite afford a four-wheeled van. Despite its limitations, the Goalie was surprisingly popular for a short time due to its low cost and tax benefits. But as the German economic miracle took hold, people wanted real cars, not unstable three-wheelers. The Goalie became a symbol of the lean years. Looking at one today with its single front wheel tucked under a narrow nose and its wide cargo bed, it looks precarious. It serves as a reminder of how simple a vehicle can be and still be considered a truck. It is minimalism taken to the extreme, a shaft-driven relic of a desperate time. Let's head back to Japan to meet a truck that is as adorable as it is functional, the Daihatsu Midget. Specifically, the early DK models launched in 1957. If you have ever seen a movie set in 1950s Tokyo, you have seen these zipping around. The Midget was designed to fit into a specific tax class that made it accessible to practically everyone. It is tiny, so small that a large American driver might actually struggle to fit inside. We are talking about a total weight of just over 1,000 lbs and a payload capacity of around 600 to 800 lbs. It was the definition of light duty. The most shocking feature of the early DKA version was the steering. It didn't have a steering wheel, it had motorcycle handlebars. The cabin was essentially a glass and steel bubble built around a scooter. It had one headlight in the center on the earliest drafts, later moving to two bug eyes, giving it the look of a startled frog. Power came from a tiny 15 cubic inch, 250C two-stroke engine. It wasn't fast, topping out at about 40 mph, and it certainly wasn't safe by modern standards, but it was exactly what Japan needed to bridge the gap between bicycles and full-size trucks. The Daihatsu Midget became a cult icon representing the democratization of logistics. You didn't need a commercial license or a lot of money to own one. It is the spiritual ancestor of the modern K-truck, but with way more character. The charm of the Midget lies in its honesty. It doesn't pretend to be tough, it pretends to be helpful. Driving one today is a terrifyingly fun experience. You are inches from the ground, surrounded by thin metal, buzzing along like an angry hornet. It is impossible not to smile when you see one, proving that good things really do come in small packages. When you think of Jeep, you think of the Wrangler or the old CJ models. But in the late 1950s, Jeep decided to get weird with the Forward Control series, and the FC-150 is the strangest of the bunch. The idea was to maximize cargo space on a short chassis. So they took the frame of a standard CJ5 Jeep and placed the cab famously on top of the engine, right at the very front. The result is a truck with a wheelbase of just 81 inches, that is shorter than a modern Honda Civic, yet it carried a full-sized pickup bed. The proportions of the FC-150 are mind-boggling. It looks like a pug dog, flat-faced, top-heavy, and ready to fight. This design gave it incredible off-road maneuverability because there was virtually no front overhang. You could approach a vertical rock wall and your tires would hit it before the bumper did. However, this design came with a terrifying drawback. Because all the weight was in the front, if you braked hard while going down a steep hill with an empty bed, the rear wheels could actually lift off the ground. The truck was known to do stoppies, which is not what you want in a utility vehicle. Despite the scary handling quirks, the FC-150 is a marvel of packaging. Jeep even had to add a heavy cast-iron weight to the rear bumper just to keep the back wheels on the ground. The view from the driver's seat is commanding. You see nothing but the road directly beneath your feet. It is a masterpiece of industrial design by Brooks Stevens, distinct from anything else on the American road. Today, the Jeep FC-150 is a collector's dream, a rugged, quirky 4x4 that proves Jeep wasn't afraid to think outside the box, even if the result was a little tipsy. If you have ever been to a vintage food truck festival, you have probably seen a Citroën Type H. But don't let its modern hipster popularity fool you. This is a serious piece of industrial history dating back to 1947. The first thing you notice is the skin. The entire body is made of corrugated steel panels, looking exactly like the Junkers airplanes of W. Poo. This wasn't for style. The ridges added immense strength to the thin metal sheets without adding extra weight. It was cheap, strong, and ugly beautiful, staying in production for 34 years with minimal changes. The Type H was revolutionary beneath the skin. It featured a unitary body with no separate frame, four-wheel independent suspension, and most importantly, front-wheel drive. This meant the floor in the back was completely flat and incredibly low to the ground, just 13 inches high. You could walk in and out without climbing, standing fully upright inside thanks to the 6-foot ceiling height in many models. It was a rolling box of maximum efficiency. The pig-nose front end, with the engine protruding forward into the cabin, gave it a distinctive silhouette that became a French icon. Driving a Type H is a physical workout. The steering is heavy, the gearbox is tricky, and the engine, usually a 116 cubic inch 1.9L gas unit, is loud. Top speed is theoretically 60 mph, but you would need a lot of courage and earplugs to sustain it. Yet it is virtually indestructible. It was the van of the French police, the post office, and the local baker. It is a vehicle that prioritizes function over form so heavily that it actually circles back to being a work of art. The tube, as it is affectionately called, is weird, corrugated, and utterly unmistakable. For many Americans growing up in the mid-20th century, the sound of the Divco was the sound of mourning. Divco, Detroit Industrial Vehicle Company, built trucks specifically for one purpose: multi-stop delivery. They are most famous as milk trucks. The design is iconic: a rounded snub-nosed hood and a smooth, almost Art Deco body. But the weirdest feature of the Divco was how you drove it. These trucks were designed for extreme efficiency, allowing the driver to operate the vehicle while standing up. Yes, standing up. They featured a complex control system that allowed the milkmen to drive from a standing position using a throttle and brake mounted on the steering column or floor. This meant they could hop in, drive to the next house, and hop out without constantly sitting down and getting up, saving time and energy over hundreds of stops. The doors were bifold or sliding, allowing them to stay open while driving. The standard engine was typically a Hercules or Continental 4-cylinder, geared incredibly low. Top speed was irrelevant. These trucks lived their lives at 15 to 20 mph. The Divco represents a hyper-specialized era of automotive design. It didn't care about highway travel. It cared about stop-and-go efficiency. They were ubiquitous in American suburbs for decades, delivering milk, bread, and laundry. Today, their unique shape makes them popular as hot rods and promotional vehicles, but seeing one restored to its original specification highlights just how specialized it was. It's a truck that asks the question, why sit down when you have work to do? It is a fascinating slice of Americana that has largely disappeared along with the milkman himself. We end our list with perhaps the most capable and most hated vehicle in U.S. military history, the M561, better known as the Gamma Goat. Developed for the Vietnam War, the military needed a truck that could go anywhere, and they meant anywhere. The solution was a six-wheel drive, 6C6 vehicle with an articulated joint in the middle. The cab and the trailer were permanently connected, but they could twist independently, allowing the wheels to stay on the ground over the roughest terrain imaginable. It looks like two vehicles smashed together, but it is one continuous machine. The GOAT name was well-earned because it could climb over rocks and wade through mud that would stop a Jeep dead. But here is the crazy part. It was fully amphibious. It had an aluminum body and could float, propelled in the water by its wheels at a speed of roughly 2 to 3 mph. On land, it could hit 55 mph, powered by a Detroit diesel 3 to 53 two-stroke engine. This engine was the source of much hatred. It was located right behind the driver's head and was so deafeningly loud that drivers had to wear hearing protection just to operate it without suffering permanent hearing loss. The steering was also bizarre. It featured four-wheel steering where the front and rear axles turned in opposite directions, making it handle strangely on pavement. It was complex, noisy, and required constant maintenance. The soldiers hated it because it was uncomfortable. The mechanics hated it because it was hard to fix. But in terms of pure weird engineering, it is a masterpiece, an articulated, swimming, six-wheeled, screaming banshee of a truck. There has never been anything like the Gamma Goat before or since, cementing its place as the weirdest military truck ever made. We have seen some truly crazy things today. From the wobbly three-wheelers of Japan to the swimming military goats of America, these 10 trucks prove that automotive history is anything but boring. It was a time when engineers took risks and built machines that prioritized function over form in the weirdest ways possible. Which one was your favorite? Did you love the futuristic Kalani or the standing drive Divco? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into mechanical history. Thanks for watching. Everything you know about trucks is wrong. Forget the boring 18-wheelers you see today. We are uncovering the freaks of nature that history tried to forget. Imagine a truck with two engines, a tank hauler wider than a house, and a pickup that only has three wheels. These aren't sci-fi concepts. These are real mechanical monsters that actually roam the earth. From Germany's loophole giants to the strangest British inventions, we've ranked the 8 most bizarre vintage trucks ever built. The engineering is insane and the stories are even crazier. You won't believe the final truck on this list even exists. Buckle up, hit that subscribe button right now, and let's dive into the weirdest machinery in history. Let's start our journey with something that might look vaguely familiar but is weirdly iconic in its own right: the International Metro van. If you grew up in America in the 1950s, this wasn't just a truck. It was the bringer of joy. It was the milk truck, the bakery wagon, and the original delivery step van that roamed every neighborhood. Introduced in 1938, the Metro van was a radical departure from the blocky truck norms of the time. While other trucks were just crude cabs bolted onto frames, the Metro body was inspired by Art Deco design, looking like a streamlined loaf of bread on wheels. International Harvester designed this vehicle to literally replace the horse-drawn wagons that preceded it. The engineering behind it was surprisingly advanced for a work vehicle. It featured a unibody construction long before it became an industry standard, which maximized the interior cargo space relative to its footprint. This allowed for a cavernous storage area in a relatively compact vehicle, perfect for navigating tight city streets. The rounded corners weren't just for style, they helped maneuverability. However, the engine placement was the weird part. It was tucked inside the cabin between the driver and passenger seats, covered by a large metal hump that radiated immense heat. The driving experience was unique, to say the least. The Metro van was designed specifically so the driver could operate it while standing up or sitting on a folding seat. This was crucial for delivery drivers who had to jump in and out hundreds of times a day. While it is a nostalgic piece of Americana today, driving a Metro van by modern standards feels terrifying. You are essentially sitting right on the front bumper with almost no crash protection, surrounded by thin sheet metal. It's the cutest entry on our list, but as we move forward, the machines are about to get much tougher and significantly stranger. We are dialing the clock back to the chaotic, muddy trenches of World War I. Meet the FWD Model B. Now, FWD stands for four-wheel drive. That might sound standard today, but in 1912, that was practically alien technology. Before this truck, the idea of powering all four wheels on a heavy transport vehicle was considered unnecessary complexity. The Model B was a definitive ugly duckling of military history. It lacked almost all creature comforts. There was no windshield to protect you from bullets or rain, no doors, and certainly no heater. It was raw, exposed mechanical brutality designed for survival, not comfort. The layout of the Model B is what makes it so bizarre to modern eyes. The driver sat completely exposed to the elements, perched incredibly high above the engine on a flat wooden bench. The engine itself was actually located under the floorboards, directly beneath the driver's feet. This meant that if you needed to perform maintenance or fix a breakdown in the field, you were practically disassembling the cockpit floor. Despite its crude appearance, the engineering was robust. It used a full-time four-wheel drive system with a lockable center differential, advanced technology that wouldn't become common in passenger cars for another 70 years. But here is why it's legendary. During the Great War, while standard rear-wheel drive trucks were sinking helplessly into the thick French mud, the Model B just kept moving. Its top speed was only about 15 miles per hour, but speed wasn't the point, traction was. Over 16,000 of these were built for the war effort, hauling ammunition and troops where horses couldn't go. They were slow, loud, and incredibly uncomfortable, but they proved once and for all that four-driven wheels were superior to two. It looks like a garden shed on wheels, but this machine literally helped win a war. Crossing the Atlantic to Great Britain, we find a truck that looks like it eats other trucks for breakfast, the Scamell Constructor. If the Metro van was a loaf of bread, the Constructor is a solid brick wall. Produced in the 1950s, this 6C6 heavyweight was designed for one thing: extreme haulage. We are talking about pulling loads of over 150 tons without breaking a sweat. The design is pure, unadulterated function. It has a bonnet that seems to stretch on for miles, housing massive diesel engines, typically from Rolls-Royce or Gardner, which were the gold standard of power. The sheer width of this thing is intimidating, taking up nearly the entire lane. It was designed as a prime mover for the heaviest industries, moving transformers, giant girders, and military hardware. The cab was Spartan, loud, and hot, vibrating with the raw power of the massive engine sitting just inches from the driver's legs. Visually, it is unmistakable due to its wide stance and the aggressive vertical grille bars. It represents a golden era of British heavy engineering where overbuilt was the standard operating procedure. Nothing on this truck is plastic. It is all heavy, thick steel. What makes the Scamell Constructor so strange mechanically is its rear suspension setup. It utilized a unique walking beam bogie suspension. This allowed the rear wheels to articulate wildly over rough terrain, keeping the tires on the ground even when the truck was twisting over ditches or uneven construction sites. Watching a Constructor move is like watching a dinosaur. It's slow, deliberate, and unstoppable. It doesn't have the speed of modern trucks, topping out at maybe 30 mph if you were brave, but the torque. The torque could probably move a mountain. It's a mechanical beast that demands respect. Now, let's get weird. We are heading to Czechoslovakia to look at the Tatra 805. Fans of the brand affectionately call this truck the Kachenia, which translates to the duck. Why? Because of the comical way it waddles over terrain. But don't let the cute nickname fool you. This is one of the most capable off-road trucks ever built, utilizing engineering concepts that confuse even modern mechanics. Produced in the 1950s, the 805 was designed to go where no other vehicle could, serving as a military truck, an ambulance, and an expedition vehicle for explorers. The Tatra 805 uses a unique backbone chassis design, a trademark of the Tatra brand. Instead of a traditional ladder frame, the entire structure of the truck is a central tube that houses the drive shaft. This allows for independent swing axles. Here is the visual kicker. When you look at an 805 from the back when it is unladen, the wheels look like they are broken. They bow inwards with extreme positive camber. This isn't a defect, it's a feature. As the truck gets loaded down, the wheels flatten out, providing incredible traction and ground clearance that allows it to crawl over rocks and logs that would leave a Jeep high-centered. Powering this duck is another oddity, an air-cooled V8 engine. Yes, air-cooled, just like a massive version of a Beetle engine displacing 2.5 liters. It produced a distinctive loud roaring sound that you could hear coming from miles away. The cabin is high and incredibly forward-set, giving it a pug-nosed appearance. It looks top-heavy, it sounds like a thunderstorm, and its wheels bend in ways wheels shouldn't bend. But in the mud of Eastern Europe, the duck was king. It could hit speeds of about 45 to 50 mph on the road, but its true home was deep in the mud where its weird axles could shine. In post-war Germany, one truck reigned supreme on the Autobahn, the Krupp Titan. The name is not an exaggeration. Everything about this truck was colossal. In the early 1950s, the Allies had placed restrictions on the horsepower of German trucks to prevent them from building military-grade hardware, limiting new engines to 150 horsepower. But Krupp, being a giant of industry, found a bizarre and brilliant loophole to build the most powerful truck on the road. They wanted to dominate heavy transport, and they weren't going to let regulations stop them. Here is the engineering twist that makes the Titan legendary. It technically didn't have one large six-cylinder engine. Instead, Krupp engineers took two separate three-cylinder, two-stroke diesel engines and bolted them together. They were connected by a gear drive to a common output shaft. This allowed Krupp to claim they were using smaller legal engines while actually delivering a massive combined 210 horsepower. This blew the competition away. The sound of this engine is legendary, a unique singing two-stroke diesel roar that is unlike anything else on the road, often described as a mechanical symphony. Visually, the Titan is a masterpiece of industrial design. The hood is excessively long to accommodate that complex twin-engine setup, emphasizing its power. The cabin is spacious, almost luxurious for the time, earning it the nickname the Highway Cruiser. It was capable of sustaining speeds of around 50 mph while hauling heavy trailers, which was fast for the 1950s. Today, seeing a Krupp Titan is a rare event, but the complexity of that twin-engine setup remains one of the strangest engineering workarounds in automotive history. It was a machine built to defy the rules and look good doing it. We are entering the monster tier now. Meet the Rotunoff Super Atlantic. If the Krupp Titan was a king, the Rotunoff is a god. Built in limited numbers in the late 1950s by a visionary named George Rotunoff, this vehicle was designed for one specific Herculean task: towing the British Army's Centurion tanks. The scale of this machine is difficult to comprehend until you see a person standing next to it. It is wider than a standard lane of traffic and stands tall enough to look down on semi-trucks. It wasn't built for commerce, it was built for brute force. Under the massive hood sat a supercharged Rolls-Royce diesel engine. This power plant guzzled fuel at a rate that would make a modern environmentalist faint, but it was necessary. The Super Atlantic was rated to pull gross train weights of over 100 tons. It utilized a heavy-duty gearbox and rear axles that looked like they belonged on a locomotive rather than a truck. The truck didn't just pull weight, it mastered it. The tires alone are massive, designed to carry extreme loads without bursting, and the chassis is reinforced steel thick enough to stop a bullet. The visual impact of the Rotunoff is hard to describe. It has a flat, brutalist front end with headlights that look tiny compared to the massive grille vents. The fenders are huge slabs of steel. Only about 35 of these monsters were ever built, making them incredibly rare today. To see one is to witness the peak of Cold War heavy hauling capability. It's big, it's bad, and it's undeniably bizarre in its excess. While other trucks struggled to move construction equipment, the Rotunoff was moving the weapons of war without breaking a sweat. At number 2, we have a machine that was so far ahead of its time it feels like it traveled back from the future. The Jeffrey Quad, also known as the Nash Quad. Produced starting in 1913, over a century ago, this truck features technology that modern car companies brag about as new today: four-wheel steering. It was built in Wisconsin and became the workhorse of the Allied forces. While it looks like a simple flatbed wagon from a distance, underneath it was a complex dance of drive shafts, differentials, and universal joints that was revolutionary. Yes, you heard that right. The Jeffrey Quad could steer with both its front and rear wheels simultaneously. This allowed the rear wheels to track exactly in the path of the front wheels. This was crucial on the muddy, rutted wagon trails of the early 20th century. If the front wheels made it through the mud, the rear wheels would follow in the same groove, preventing the truck from creating new drag and getting stuck. It also featured portal axles, gears inside the wheels, to give it massive ground clearance of over 14 inches, allowing it to drive over stumps and rocks. The performance was modest by today's standards, a top speed of maybe 15 to 20 mph, but its capability was unmatched. The wheels themselves were often solid rubber, meaning you never got a flat tire, but the ride would shatter your spine. It was the Cybertruck of 1913, weird, controversial, but undeniably capable. It proves that good ideas don't always stick around immediately, as four-wheel steering disappeared from trucks for decades afterwards. The Jeffrey Quad remains a testament to early American ingenuity, solving problems with complex mechanical solutions. And finally, we have arrived at number 1. We've seen six-wheeled giants and tank pullers, but nothing is quite as baffling as the Reliant Ant. Just look at it. It's a pickup truck with 3 wheels. It looks like a toy that escaped from a factory. Produced in the UK starting in 1967, the Ant wasn't built because 3 wheels are better than 4. Absolutely not. The answer, as is often the case in automotive history, is taxes. In the UK, 3-wheeled vehicles under a certain weight were taxed as motorcycles. Reliant, the company famous for the Robin, decided to apply this loophole logic to a work vehicle. The result is this bizarre triangular truck. It has a tiny 700cc or 850cc engine, producing barely enough power to merge onto a highway without praying. The payload was rated for about 800 to 1100 LEBs, which sounds decent until you realize the truck itself looks like it might tip over in a strong wind. The cabin is made of fiberglass, meaning if you hit something, the truck basically shatters. It was designed for light work in narrow European streets, but it looks utterly ridiculous. Driving the Ant requires a specific kind of bravery. Cornering is a terrifying experience due to the single front wheel. It is the absolute antithesis of everything a truck is supposed to be. It's not stable, it's not powerful, and it's not tough. Driving the Reliant Ant loaded with cargo felt less like driving a truck and more like balancing a wheelbarrow on a tightrope. And that is exactly why it is the weirdest, most bizarre truck to ever exist. It's a legal loophole on wheels that somehow survived into the modern world. From the massive Rottenoff to the tiny Reliant Ant, these 8 trucks prove that automotive history is full of wild surprises. It was a time when engineers took big risks to solve problems, creating machines with true character. Which one of these vintage oddities was your favorite? Would you dare to drive the 3-wheeled Ant? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through, please hit like and subscribe for more amazing stories. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Have you ever seen a truck like a giant hot dog speeding down the highway? Or a military beast so thirsty it consumes fuel faster than you can pour it? Welcome to the wild side of automotive history. Today we are not looking at your average pickup trucks like the Ford F-150. We are diving into the strange, the legendary, and the absolutely bizarre. From the frozen wastelands of the Soviet Union to the sunny streets of America, we have hunted down 10 classic trucks that defy explanation. Some were built to save nations, while others were just crazy experiments gone wrong. Buckle up, because you won't believe these machines actually exist. We begin our journey with a true war hero, a machine that proves engineering knows no borders, the Studebaker US-6. While the name sounds as American as apple pie, this truck became an absolute legend on the other side of the world, in the Soviet Union. Produced between 1941 and 1945 by the Studebaker Corporation in Indiana, this 6x6 behemoth was designed to conquer the toughest terrains imaginable. While the U.S. Army preferred other trucks, the US-6 became the backbone of the Red Army during World War II, proving that sometimes a product finds its true home far away from where it was born. What made the US-6 so special was its rugged simplicity. It was powered by the Hercules JXD 6-cylinder gasoline engine, producing roughly 95 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but combined with its robust transmission and a payload capacity of 5,000 pounds off-road, it was unstoppable. The Soviets loved it because, unlike their domestic trucks at the time, the Studebaker was reliable and could handle the brutal Russian winter without freezing up. It featured a distinctively tough design with metal grills and a high stance, allowing it to wade through deep mud and snow that would trap lesser vehicles. However, the most iconic role of this truck was serving as the primary platform for the terrifying Katyusha rocket launchers. When you see historical footage of rockets firing into the German lines, creating a deafening noise that terrified enemy troops, they are likely launching from the back of an American Studebaker. Over 200,000 of these were sent to the USSR under the Lend-Lease program. It is a strange twist of history that an American truck became the symbol of Soviet military might. The US-6 was tough, simple, and rugged, a perfect start to our list of legends. If the Studebaker was the hero of the war, the Ural 375D was the monster of the Cold War. Entering production in 1961, this Soviet general-purpose truck was designed with one goal: to go where no roads existed. The Ural 375D is a 6x6 off-road beast that looks like it could smash through a brick wall without a scratch. With a curb weight of over 18,000 pounds, it is a massive piece of iron. Its aggressive, boxy nose and high ground clearance make it instantly recognizable as a symbol of Soviet heavy industry and military might. The heart of this giant is a massive 7.0-liter V8 gasoline engine, the ZIL 375. And this is where things get crazy. This engine was derived from a luxury limousine design, meaning it required high-octane fuel, a rarity in the military. But its biggest problem is its legendary thirst. This truck is one of the least fuel-efficient vehicles ever made. In rough terrain, consumption could reach nearly 2.5 miles per gallon. That means for every 100 miles you drive, you burn through roughly 40 gallons of fuel. It is an environmental nightmare, but a mechanical marvel of raw power. Despite its drinking problem, the Ural 375D was an off-road genius. It featured a central tire inflation system, allowing the driver to adjust tire pressure from inside the cabin to float over sand, swamp, or deep snow. It was used for everything from transporting troops to carrying the BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher system. The distinctive roar of its V8 engine could be heard from miles away. While it has largely been replaced by diesel versions today, the original gasoline-powered Ural remains a legend for its ability to traverse terrain that would stop a modern tank. Leaving the Soviet giants behind, we travel to East Germany to meet a true icon of the socialist era, the IFA W50. Built in the city of Ludwigsfelde, this truck wasn't just a vehicle, it was the backbone of an entire nation's economy. The W stands for Werdau, where it was designed, and 50 represents its payload capacity of 5 metric tons or about 11,000 pounds. Production started in 1965 and ran for an incredible 25 years. If you lived in the Eastern Bloc between the 60s and the 80s, you saw this truck every single day. The IFA W50 was powered by a 6.56-liter four-cylinder diesel engine. It wasn't built for speed, topping out at around 50 miles per hour, but it was built to last forever. Its design is instantly recognizable with its cab-over-engine layout and a friendly wide grille that gives it a distinct face. The engineering was focused on simplicity. You could practically repair it with a hammer and a basic wrench, which made it incredibly popular in developing countries. It was a massive export success, sold to nations across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, including Vietnam. What truly made the W50 special was its versatility. It had over 60 different variants straight from the factory. It served as a dump truck, a fire engine, a military troop carrier, a crane, and even a furniture van with an extended cabin. Some versions were equipped with balloon tires for agriculture, while others had all-wheel drive for military use. While it lacked the comfort and electronics of Western trucks, the IFA W50 represents pure utilitarian engineering at its finest. It was a truck that built nations, one load at a time. Welcome to Hungary. In the 1960s, the Hungarian People's Army needed a new off-road truck, and the Czepel Works delivered the D344. At first glance, it looks like a standard vintage military truck, perhaps a bit charming with its rounded hood. But if you look underneath the chassis, you will find a drivetrain layout that is completely unique in the world of trucks. Most 4x4 trucks use a central drive shaft to send power to a differential in the middle of the front axle. But Czepel engineers had a different idea. To keep the truck's profile low and stable, the engineers couldn't put a bulky differential directly under the engine. Their solution was a complex transfer case that sent power to the front wheels via two separate propeller shafts, one for the left wheel and one for the right. This intricate mechanical ballet allowed the engine to sit lower, giving the truck a much lower center of gravity than its competitors. It was powered by a 5.5-liter four-cylinder diesel engine producing roughly 100 horsepower. It wasn't a powerhouse, but it was smart. Despite its modest power and a top speed of only about 50 miles per hour, the D344 was surprisingly agile on mountain roads thanks to its clever weight distribution. It served faithfully for decades, towing artillery and carrying supplies across difficult terrain. While the dual-shaft system was complicated to maintain, it proved that Hungarian engineers were willing to think outside the box. Today, collectors love it for its quirks and that distinct, almost retro-futuristic rounded cabin. It is a prime example of how different nations solve the same problems in completely different ways. Czechoslovakia has a rich history of mechanical engineering, and one of their most famous creations is the Praga V3S, a legendary military off-roader. But what happens when you need a truck for regular roads? You get the Praga S5T. The S stands for Silničný, which means road in Czech, and 5T stands for its 5-ton capacity. Launched in the late 1950s, the S5T was essentially the civilized brother of the military V3S. It took the rugged bones of a war machine and adapted them for hauling coal, milk, and groceries. The most distinctive feature of the S5T is its engine. It used an air-cooled Tatra diesel engine. Yes, air-cooled. This meant there was no radiator to leak, no water pump to fail, and no coolant to freeze in the harsh winters. The engine sound is unmistakable, a loud clattering roar that you can hear from miles away. While the military version had a flat face, the S5T featured a long protruding nose to house the engine, giving it better aerodynamics and a unique, almost anteater-like profile that stands out on the road. Inside, the cabin was more comfortable than the military version, although comfortable is a relative term for a truck from the 60s. The S5T was lowered for better stability on asphalt and geared for higher speeds, reaching about 45 miles per hour. It was the workhorse of Czechoslovakia for decades. While it might look strange to modernize, the S5T was a triumph of practical engineering. It's rugged, loud, and undeniably charismatic. A truck that refuses to die and still has a cult following among classic vehicle enthusiasts today. When you think of American heavy trucks, names like Mack or Peterbilt usually come to mind. But true connoisseurs know the legend of Brockway. Founded in Cortland, New York, Brockway started as a carriage builder in the 1800s before moving into trucks. The Model 761 is a prime example of their philosophy: rugged luxury. Why is it on this list? Because of its mascot. Every Brockway truck proudly displays a husky dog on the radiator grille, They were marketed as the most rugged truck in the world, and the Husky symbolized stamina and strength. The 761 series, popular in the 60s and 70s, wasn't mass-produced on a generic assembly line like a Ford. These were often custom-built to the buyer's exact specifications. They were famous for their heavy-duty construction, using real steel fenders instead of fiberglass or plastic. Power came from massive diesel engines, often Cummins or Caterpillar, allowing these trucks to haul massive loads of timber or construction materials. Driving a Brockway 761 was a physical experience. No power steering in the early days, just a raw mechanical connection between the driver and the road. Sadly, the company closed its doors in 1977, making these trucks rare collectibles today. The Brockway 761 represents a bygone era of American manufacturing where quality and customization were more important than volume. Seeing a Husky on the road today is a special treat for truck lovers. It stands as a monument to the golden age of trucking, a time when trucks had distinct personalities and were built to outlive their owners. But if a massive American semi is too big for you, how about a truck that is technically a motorcycle? We are now entering the weird and tiny section of our list, and we start in Italy with the Machi MB1. You might know the name Machi from their famous World War II fighter planes or Aermacchi motorcycles. After the war, Italy needed cheap, efficient transportation to rebuild the country, and Machi had a brilliant idea: combine a motorcycle with a truck. The MB1, introduced in the 1950s, is a three-wheel diesel truck. Yes, 3 wheels. It looks like the front of a motorcycle was welded to the back of a cargo box. But don't let the size fool you. This was a serious machine. It featured a fully closed cabin for the driver, which was pure luxury compared to riding a scooter in the rain. It was powered by a robust 750cc diesel engine, providing enough torque to carry heavy loads of stone, wood, or produce. The design is incredibly utilitarian. Single front wheel allowed for a tight turning radius, perfect for navigating the narrow, ancient streets of Italian cities where a standard 4-wheel truck would get stuck. The Machi MB1 represents a specific moment in history where efficiency was more important than speed or comfort. Top speed was barely 40 miles per hour, and the ride was bumpy, but it got the job done. It chugged along with that classic diesel thumping sound, helping to build modern Italy. It is strange, it can be unstable at high speeds if you aren't careful, but it is undeniably cool. But if you think 3 wheels are weird, wait until you see a truck made of canvas. This might be the most adorable truck ever made. Meet the Solito. Produced in France by New Map starting in the 1950s, this vehicle stretches the definition of the word truck. It was designed as a sans-permis vehicle, meaning it had an engine so small that you didn't even need a driver's license to operate it in France. The Solito is basically a sheet metal box on 3 tiny wheels, weighing only about 300 pounds. It is so small you could almost park it in your living room. But the craziest part: to save weight and money, on earlier models like the TC, the doors and sides were often made of canvas. It is essentially a tent on wheels. Power came from a tiny 2-stroke engine, often around 125 cc, similar to what you would find in a small scooter. With less than 5 horsepower, the top speed was a terrifying 30 miles per hour, if you were brave enough to push it that far. It offers 0 crash protection, 0 speed, and 0 luxury, but it oozes character. It was marketed to small business owners, bakers, milkmen, and florists who needed to move goods short distances around the village. Driving one feels like you are sitting in a vintage toy. The engine buzzes right next to you, and you can feel every pebble on the road. It serves as a reminder of a time when regulations were loose, and innovation meant making things as simple as humanly possible. From a French tent truck, let's go to Japan for a truck that has the cutest face in automotive history. In the world of Japanese K-trucks, tiny vehicles regulated by government size limits, the Mazda Porter Cab stands out as the undisputed king of cuteness. Specifically, we are talking about the facelifted version introduced in 1977. While the original model was charming, the 77 update gave it a look that looks like it came straight out of an anime. The most distinctive feature is its face. It has two large round headlights surrounded by thick cream-colored plastic bezels that look like glasses or the eyes of a panda. Between those eyes is a small vent that looks like a nose. It literally looks like the truck is smiling at you. Beneath the cabin sits a small 550cc two-cylinder engine, upgraded from the earlier versions to meet new regulations. It produces about 29 horsepower, which is just enough to carry its 300-pound payload through tight city streets. The engine sound is unique, a high-pitched buzz that sounds more like a lawnmower than a truck, adding to its toy-like appeal. It's tiny, efficient, and impossible to ignore. Despite its adorable appearance, the Porter Cab was a tough worker. It helped rebuild and sustain Japan's economy, navigating the tightest alleyways of Tokyo and Osaka where larger trucks couldn't fit. Today, they are cult classics around the world. People modify them, lower them, or just restore them to keep that happy face on the road. It is impossible to be angry when you see a 1977 Mazda Porter Cab. But for our final truck, we have something that isn't just cute, it is a global celebrity. We have saved the best for last. This is not just a truck, it is a marketing masterpiece, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. The idea was born in 1936 when Karl Mayer, the nephew of the company's founder, suggested building a vehicle shaped like a giant hot dog to promote their sausages. The concept was crazy, but it worked. While there have been many versions over the decades built on Dodge, Chevy, and GMC chassis, the core design remains the same, a 27-foot-long fiberglass hot dog resting on a yellow bun. This vehicle defies all logic. It is aerodynamic nonsense, visually loud, and serves no practical purpose other than to make people smile and hungry. The driver is officially called a hot dogger, and their job is to drive across America spreading joy and handing out wiener whistles. Underneath the bun, modern versions are typically powered by a powerful V8 engine, similar to a delivery van, allowing it to keep up with highway traffic at 65 miles per hour. It's a surreal sight to see a giant hot dog overtaking you on the freeway. The Wienermobile proves that sometimes the weirdest ideas are the most brilliant. It has survived for nearly a century, outliving almost every other car brand from the 1930s. Seeing one in real life is considered a sign of good luck by many. It is the ultimate combination of automotive engineering and pure American advertising genius. It is not just a vehicle, it is an icon of pop culture that brings out the inner child in everyone who sees it. These 10 mechanical marvels prove that automotive history is full of surprises, not just boring horsepower figures. From the frozen battlefields of the East to the sunny highways of the West, human creativity truly knows no bounds. I'm curious, if you had to pick one truck to survive a zombie apocalypse, which one would it be? The armored Ural or the speedy Wienermobile? Let us know below. If you enjoyed this wild ride, please smash that like button and subscribe for more amazing stories. Thanks for watching. Forget the boring trucks you see every day. Transport history is hiding the most insane and bizarre mechanical monsters you won't believe actually existed. From massive 8-wheel drive giants with the power to crush any terrain to tiny, freakish machines that defy all laws of physics and logic. This isn't science fiction. These are real flesh and steel machines that once ruled the streets. Today we are unlocking the secret files on the 10 most unique and rare vintage trucks in the world. Brace yourself, buckle up tight, and hit that subscribe button right now because this trip into the past is about to get incredibly bumpy. Let's start with a true heavyweight champion from the United Kingdom, the Scammell Highwayman. If you grew up in Britain between the 1950s and 70s, this wasn't just a truck. It was the undisputed king of the road. Produced by Scammell lorries, the Highwayman was iconic for its distinct, almost aggressive bonneted design that looked like a bulldog ready to bite. While most trucks of the era were transitioning to flat-front cab-over designs to save space, Scammell stuck to their guns with this massive protruding nose. It wasn't built for speed, topping out at around 30 to 40 miles per hour, but it was built to pull absolutely anything. What makes the Highwayman truly unique is its legendary status among fairground showmen. Originally designed for heavy haulage and general transport, this truck found a second life, pulling massive fairground rides and electric generators. Why? Because it was built like a tank with a solid steel chassis. It was often configured as a ballast tractor, a short, heavy truck loaded with concrete weights to generate enough traction to pull incredible loads up to 50 or even 100 tons. The engines, often sourced from Gardner or Leyland, were loud, reliable beasts that could run forever, provided you didn't mind the deafening noise inside the cabin. Visually, it is unmistakable due to the motif on the radiator grille and those singular round headlamps sitting proudly on the fenders. Later models even pioneered the use of glass-reinforced plastic fiberglass for the bonnet, a revolutionary move in the 1960s that prevented rust and reduced weight. Driving one was a workout. It had no power steering and the heater was practically non-existent. Today, a restored Highwayman is a piece of industrial art. But while the Scamel was busy hauling massive carnival rides across Britain, over in Italy, engineers were building a truck so small you could almost park it in the Scamel's glove box. If the Scamel is a Great Dane, the Piaggio Ape Pentaro is a Chihuahua trying to pull a sled. You have probably heard of the Piaggio Ape, the famous three-wheeled Italian delivery scooter, but the Pentaro is something much weirder. The name comes from the Greek word for five, because this is a five-wheeled tractor-trailer. Yes, Piaggio actually built a miniature semi-truck based on a scooter engine. It was introduced in the early 1960s as a solution for navigating the incredibly narrow, winding streets of ancient Italian cities, where a full-size truck would simply get stuck between buildings. The engineering is hilarious but brilliant. The driver sits on a saddle, steering with motorcycle handlebars, but behind him is a professional fifth-wheel coupling, just like on a giant 18-wheeler. It was powered by a tiny two-stroke engine, producing barely enough horsepower to reach 40 miles per hour downhill. Despite its size, it was rated to carry loads of up to 2,500 lbs, 700 kg, making it a serious tool for transporting vegetables, wine, or building materials. Because it was an articulated vehicle, it could turn in extremely tight circles, making it the ultimate urban delivery weapon for tight corners. However, driving the Pentaro was terrifying. The stability was questionable, and with a heavy load, braking required foresight and prayer because the trailer brakes were mechanical. Today, the Pentaro is one of the rarest versions of the Ape family. Collectors go crazy for them because they represent a time when Italy was rebuilding itself, and no idea was too crazy if it helped get the job done. It looks like a toy brought to life, but it worked hard for a living. From the tiny streets of Italy, we now jump to the rugged terrain of Czechoslovakia to meet a truck that laughs in the face of mud, snow, and gravity. When it comes to off-road trucking, there is one name that stands above the rest, Tatra, and the Tatra 138 is the machine that cemented that reputation. Produced in Czechoslovakia from 1959 to 1971, this truck is an engineering marvel that defies convention. Unlike almost every other truck on the planet that uses a ladder frame chassis, the Tatra 138 is built around a unique central backbone tube. Imagine a giant steel pipe running down the center of the truck, protecting all the drive shafts inside. This makes the truck incredibly rigid and virtually twist-proof, allowing it to carry payloads of over 12 tons across broken terrain. But the real magic lies in its swing axles. Each wheel moves independently, allowing the Tatra 138 to crawl over boulders, ditches, and deep mud that would snap a normal truck in half. Powering this beast was the T928 engine, an air-cooled V8 diesel producing around 180 horsepower. Why air-cooled? Because water freezes in the Siberian winter and boils in the desert summer. Air does neither. Tatra engines were designed to work anywhere, from the freezing taiga to the scorching tropics, without a radiator to worry about. Top speed was around 45 mph, but off-road it was unstoppable. The design of the 138 is also beautiful in a functional way. The rounded hood, often called the Tatra Smile, wasn't just for style, it provided excellent visibility for the driver and better aerodynamics. These trucks were exported to over 40 countries and became legends in construction and mining. Drivers often claimed that the only thing that could stop a Tatra 138 was running out of fuel. It is a rugged, unstoppable force of nature that proves complex engineering can be incredibly durable. The Tatra 138 was built to conquer continents, but our next vehicle was built for an island nation with very specific rules about size. Welcome to the strange world of Japanese K trucks. In post-war Japan, the government created a tax class for tiny vehicles to get the population mobile. Enter the Aichi machine industry and their masterpiece, the Koni 360 Wide. Don't let the name wide fool you. There is nothing wide about this truck by American standards. It is so narrow that two large adults sitting inside would be practically hugging. Introduced in the 1960s, the Koni 360 Wide is a masterclass in space efficiency, featuring a cab-over design that pushed the wheels to the absolute corners to maximize the cargo bed length. Underneath the seats lies a tiny air-cooled two-cylinder boxer engine displacing just 354 cc that is smaller than most modern motorcycles. It produced roughly 18 horsepower, which was just enough to propel the lightweight truck and a payload of about 770 lbs, 350 kg, to a top speed of maybe 50 mph on a good day. Yet this little workhorse was the backbone of Japanese small businesses. It delivered tofu, rice, and electronics through the bustling streets of Tokyo and Osaka, fitting into alleys that no other vehicle could enter. What makes the Koni stand out today is its rarity and its face. The front fascia has a distinct, almost robotic look with low-mounted headlights and a simple metal grille. Unlike its competitors like the Subaru Sambar, the Koni is largely forgotten, which makes finding one today a huge event for collectors. Driving one is a visceral experience. With zero crumple zones, you are sitting right on top of the front wheels, feeling every bump in the road. It's cute, it's terrifying, and it's deeply charming. The Koni used a tiny air-cooled engine to save space, but our next German contender used air cooling for a completely different reason: reliability. If Germany had Mercedes and America had Ford, Spain had Pegaso, and the Pegaso Comet was the truck that put the entire nation on wheels during the economic boom of the 1960s and 70s. Manufactured by NASA, this truck bore the famous Flying Horse logo, a symbol of power and speed. The Comet wasn't just a vehicle, it was the pride of the Spanish automotive industry. With its boxy cab-over design and the distinctive cross-shaped grille, it dominated the highways from Madrid to Barcelona, becoming the undisputed king of long-haul transport on the Iberian Peninsula. Beneath the cab lay a 6.5-liter inline-six diesel engine pumping out 125 horsepower. That might sound modest today, but back then it was a powerhouse, allowing the truck to reach a top speed of around 60 mph, 95 km/h, while fully loaded. Pegaso was famous for the distinctive roar of its exhaust and its incredible durability. Drivers often tell stories of loading the truck with over 18,000 lbs, 8 tons of cargo, frequently exceeding legal limits, yet the Comet would still climb the steep mountain passes of the Pyrenees without breaking a sweat. Today, the Pegaso Comet is remembered as the truck that built modern Spain. It hauled bricks to build hotels, oranges for export, and the hopes of a growing economy. Although the Pegaso brand was eventually acquired by Iveso, the legacy of the Flying Horse lives on in the hearts of vintage truck enthusiasts. Seeing a restored Comet rolling down the road is like watching an old gladiator who still has his strength. From the Spanish giant, we return to Italy for another three-wheeled oddity that tried to challenge the dominance of the Piaggio ape. When you think of Italian scooters, you think of two names: Vespa, made by Piaggio, and Lambretta, made by Innocenti. This rivalry didn't stop at scooters, it extended into the world of utility trucks. While Piaggio had the Ape, Innocenti answered with the Lambro series, and the Lambro 550 is arguably the peak of that lineage. Launched in the mid-1960s, this wasn't just a scooter with a box. It was a serious attempt to make a three-wheeled truck that felt like a car, featuring a fully enclosed steel cabin to protect the driver from the elements. However, unlike a car, you still steered it with handlebars. Imagine sitting in a metal box, shifting gears with your hand on the handlebar clutch, and listening to the buzz of a 198cc two-stroke engine right underneath you. It was noisy, it vibrated, and it smelled of oil and gasoline. The 550 in the name referred to its payload capacity class. That's right, this tiny tricycle could carry over 1,200 lobbies, 550 klar of cargo. That is an incredible weight-to-size ratio, essentially allowing it to carry its own weight in bricks or produce. Visually, the Lambro 550 is distinct from the Ape. It has a squarer, more industrial look, often described as utilitarian chic. In Italy, these were the lifeblood of small villages used by bakers, builders, and farmers to navigate tight cobblestone streets. Sadly, when the Innocenti factory closed, the Lambro faded into obscurity faster than the Ape. Finding a working Lambro 550 today is rare. They are mechanical time capsules of an era when Italy was getting back to work, one tiny, smoky load at a time. The Lambro was a lightweight sprinter, but our next truck is a heavyweight marathon runner that carried the economy of the entire Eastern Bloc. If you lived in Eastern Europe during the Cold War, you saw this truck every single day. The Liaz 706 series is not just a vehicle, it is a symbol of socialist transport. While the Model 706 RT was the original legend, the Liaz 706 MT, which stands for Modernized Trambus, took the platform to a new level in the late 1960s. The term Trambus referred to its cab-over-engine design, which gave it a flat face resembling a bus or a tram. It was the direct evolution of the famous Skoda trucks and became the standard heavy truck for everything from garbage collection to international long-haul trucking. The Liaz 706 MT was powered by an improved M634 inline-6 diesel engine displacing nearly 12 liters. It wasn't fast, topping out at around 45 to 50 mph, 75 km/h, and it certainly wasn't quiet, but it had torque for days. The payload capacity was significant, often rated for around 9 tons on the truck itself, plus a trailer. The design of the cabin was surprisingly spacious for its time, often featuring a sleeper berth for drivers who spent weeks on the road. The most distinct feature was its large, friendly face with big round headlights and a split windshield. It had a soft, bouncing suspension that made the cabin sway like a boat, a feeling many retired truck drivers remember with a mix of nostalgia and motion sickness. These trucks were exported all over the communist world, from Cuba to Vietnam. They were simple machines that you could fix with a hammer and a wrench. While Western trucks were adding electronics and comforts, the Liaz remained a purely mechanical beast. Today, seeing a Liaz 706 MT on the road is a rare treat, a smoking, rumbling reminder of a fallen empire's industrial might. The Liaz was a conventional four-wheeler, but in Japan, Mazda decided that 3 wheels were enough, even for a truck the size of a house. When we say 3-wheel truck, you think of the tiny Piaggio or Lambretta we just discussed. But Mazda had a different idea. They thought, why don't we make a 3-wheeler that is massive? The result was the Mazda T2000, the crowning glory of Japan's obsession with 3-wheeled cargo haulers. This is not a K-truck. It is a legitimate heavy-duty vehicle that is over 20 feet, 6 meters long. Produced from 1962 to 1974, the T2000 looks like a spaceship from a 1950s comic book, with a long, narrow hood leading to a single front wheel and a wide 2-seat cabin behind it. It was the most powerful in its class, boasting a 2.0-liter, 4-cylinder, water-cooled engine putting out about 80 horsepower. This allowed it to carry a payload of 2 tons, which was impressive for a tricycle. It could reach speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, 100 km/h, which must have been a frightening experience. The main advantage of this bizarre layout was a ridiculously tight turning radius. You could drive this 20-foot giant into a narrow timber yard or a crowded construction site, spin it around on a dime thanks to that single front wheel, and drive right out. The T2000 was widely used in construction and logging, earning a reputation for toughness. However, driving it required skill. If you took a corner too fast while empty, the stability was exciting, to say the least. As Japan's highways improved and speeds increased, the unstable three-wheelers fell out of favor and were replaced by conventional trucks. Today, the Mazda T2000 is a highly coveted collector's item. It represents the pinnacle of a unique evolutionary branch of the automotive tree that simply stopped growing. The Mazda T2000 looks like science fiction, but our next truck looks like it drove straight out of a history book from the 1930s. The Praga RN is a time traveler. First introduced in 1933 in Czechoslovakia, this truck was so good, so reliable, and so essential that it remained in production for nearly 20 years, surviving World War II and the communist takeover. The RN stands for Rychly Nákladní, which translates to fast cargo. By modern standards, it wasn't fast, topping out at roughly 50 km/h, 80 km/h, but in the 1930s that was a marvel of performance. The design is pure classic elegance with a long square hood, separate flowing fenders, and large headlamps mounted on a chrome bar. Under the hood lay a 3.5-liter six-cylinder gasoline engine producing about 70 horsepower. It was a thirsty engine, but it was incredibly simple to maintain. During the war, it served as a military transport, an ambulance, and a supply truck. After the war, it rebuilt the country. It was the fire truck that saved villages, the bus that took workers to factories, and the delivery truck that brought food to cities. The payload was rated at around 3 tons, making it a versatile medium-duty truck that could go anywhere. What makes the Praga RN special is its simplicity. It was built before planned obsolescence existed. The parts were heavy, over-engineered, and designed to be repaired indefinitely. Drivers had to double-clutch every gear shift and wrestle the non-assisted steering wheel, but they trusted the Praga with their lives. Seeing one today at a vintage show is like looking at a rolling monument to the resilience of the mid-20th century. The Praga was a Czech legend, but for our final entry, we have to talk about the truck that motorized the entire Soviet Union. We end our list with the most produced truck in the history of the Soviet Union, the Gaz-51. If you look at old footage of Russia, China, or North Korea from the 1950s and 60s, 90% of the trucks you see are Gaz-51s. Over 3.4 million of these units were built. It was the Ford F-150 of the communist world, everywhere, doing everything. The design was heavily influenced by the American Studebaker US-6 truck sent to Russia during World War II, but Soviet engineers adapted it for even harsher conditions and lower quality fuel. It featured a simple 3.5-liter inline-six engine producing 70 horsepower, giving it a modest top speed of around 45 mph, 70 km/h. Early models even had wooden cabins to save steel, though later versions were all metal. With a payload of 2.5 tons, it wasn't a giant, but it was tough. It wasn't comfortable and the suspension was stiff, but it was virtually unstoppable in mud and snow thanks to its high ground clearance and robust drivetrain. It taught millions of people how to drive and how to fix an engine with basic tools. The Gaz-51 is fascinating because it is the ancestor of modern trucking in half the world. It was exported to Poland as the Lublin 51, to North Korea as the Sungri 58, and to China as the Yuejian NJ130. It is a vehicle that lacks the glamour of the Scamel or the quirkiness of the Mazda, but its sheer impact on human history is undeniable. It is the humble hero of the working class that literally built nations. Our journey discovering history's 10 most bizarre and unique vintage trucks ends here. From the unbelievable power of the Tatra to the adorable tininess of the Pentaro, engineers of the past were truly unafraid of the craziest challenges. Which machine impressed you the most? Leave a comment below. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join us in exploring more mechanical legends. Thank you for riding along and see you in the next video. Stop scrolling right now. Look at this machine. Does it look like a spaceship from the 1950s? Or maybe a giant spider made of metal? You might think these are bad Photoshop jobs or props from a sci-fi movie, but believe it or not, every single machine in this video is 100% real. We are digging into the lost files of history to find the 10 weirdest, rarest, and most mind-blowing trucks ever built. We are talking about forgotten giants that completely broke the rules of what a vehicle should look like. From Art Deco masterpieces to a 10-wheeled desert monster that defies physics. By the end of this video, you are going to question reality. Which one would you actually dare to drive? Smash that subscribe button, buckle up, and let's roll. We are kicking things off with the grandfather of the modern delivery van, the Mercedes-Benz L319. Before the Sprinter van took over the world, there was this curvy, charming piece of German engineering. Launched in 1955, this does not look like your typical rugged truck. It looks incredibly friendly, doesn't it? But do not let that cute face fool you. This was Mercedes' first real attempt at a light truck after World War II, and they absolutely nailed it. Unlike the heavy, long-nosed trucks of that era, the L319 featured a cab-over design to maximize space in tight European cities. Under the hood, or rather under the cabin, it was powered by a nearly indestructible diesel engine that produced around 43 horsepower. While the top speed was only about 50 miles per hour, speed was never the point. It was built for reliability and utility. You will notice the distinct lack of a traditional hood. Instead, you have that iconic flat rounded nose with the massive Mercedes star. It bridged the gap between a small passenger car and a heavy hauler, offering a gross vehicle weight of nearly 3.6 tons. It was the workforce that helped rebuild Germany's economy. In the United States, we are used to massive Ford F-Series or Chevys, so seeing an L319 feels like spotting a unicorn. Today, collectors go absolutely crazy for these things, often turning them into vintage food trucks or stylish campers. A fully restored model can fetch impressive prices at auctions because they are so rare. It is proof that a truck does not have to be aggressive to be legendary. It just needs to be reliable. If you saw this rolling down the street today, you would definitely stop to take a picture of this smiling truck. Now let's travel back to the future, or at least the 1940s version of it. This is the GMC Futureliner, and it is arguably the most majestic vehicle ever to roll on asphalt. General Motors only built 12 of these behemoths for their Parade of Progress. The goal was to tour across the United States and show small-town Americans the incredible technology of the future, like jet engines and microwaves. Standing at over 11 feet tall and 33 feet long, the Futureliner is an Art Deco masterpiece that looks more like a train than a truck. The engineering here is absolutely wild. It features dual wheels on the front axle, which means it has 4 front tires for steering. The driver sits centrally in a high cockpit, looking down on traffic like a pilot, with no side mirrors, just a complex system of lenses. Power came from a 302 cubic inch inline-6 engine, and while it looked fast, it struggled to hit 40 miles per hour due to its massive 13-ton weight. The sides of the truck open up hydraulically to reveal stage displays, turning the vehicle into a mobile theater. Only a few of these still exist today, and when one goes to auction, we are talking about serious money. One actually sold for over $4 million at Barrett-Jackson, making it one of the most expensive trucks in history. It represents an era of American optimism where we thought the future would be sleek, chrome-plated, and streamlined. It was not just about hauling cargo, it was about hauling ideas. Sadly, the Parade of Progress was cut short by World War II, making the Futureliner a rare snapshot of a dream that never fully happened. If the Futureliner was about science, the Labatt Streamliner was about style and, of course, delivering beer. Commissioned by the Labatt Brewing Company in Canada during the late 1930s, this truck was designed by Count Alexis de Sachnovsky. Yes, a literal count designed a beer truck. He applied the principles of aerodynamics to a heavy hauler, creating a shape that looked more like a grounded airplane or a locomotive than a delivery vehicle. The curves are stunning, earning it awards at the World's Fair for its groundbreaking design language. Mechanically, the Streamliner was built on a White Motor Company chassis, specifically chosen for its durability. But the bodywork was pure art, hand-beaten from aluminum and wood to create that teardrop shape. The cab slanted backward aggressively, significantly reducing wind resistance. This was decades ahead of its time for trucks, where most were just square bricks on wheels. While it helped with fuel efficiency, the main purpose was marketing. It was a rolling billboard that proved beer delivery could be sophisticated and futuristic. Unfortunately, the Streamliners had a tragic ending. Most of these beautiful machines were scrapped for their metal during the war efforts or simply fell into disrepair. However, their legacy lives on through historical photos and a few painstaking recreations. It reminds us of a time when industrial design was not just about cost-cutting, it was about making a statement. Imagine seeing this rolling down the highway today. It would stop traffic instantly. It is the kind of elegance we just do not see in the trucking industry anymore. Okay, I promised you things you would not believe exist, and here is the ultimate proof. This is the Dabian. Now, to be technically accurate, this is not a factory vintage truck, but a modern custom monster built with vintage DNA. Owned by the Rainbow Sheikh of the UAE, this is widely considered the largest SUV in the world. Just look at the scale of this thing next to a normal car. It looks like it could crush a house without even noticing. It is a one-of-a-kind creation that pushes engineering to the absolute limit. The Dabian measures over 35 feet long and utilizes the chassis from a vintage Oshkosh M-Ton 075 military truck. But here is the kicker. It has a Jeep Wrangler cabin grafted onto the back as the driver's seat. It sits on 10 massive wheels. Yes, 10. It is designed to float over the soft sand dunes of the desert like a ship on the ocean. Weighing in at a staggering 24 tons, this beast is powered by a 600-horsepower Caterpillar diesel engine to get it moving. The front-end design is actually based on a vintage truck style from the 1940s, giving it that retro look despite being built recently. The Dabian is not about practicality, it is about excess and imagination. It combines the raw, rugged history of American military transport with a level of luxury that is hard to comprehend. While you won't see this on a public highway, it stands as a monument to what happens when you have unlimited budget and a love for giant trucks. It is real, it drives, and it is terrifying. Let's get back to some pure American grit. Meet the Corvette D600, often affectionately called the High Boy, or simply the Tall Boy. Produced in North Carolina in the early 1950s, this truck looks like it hit the gym and never skipped neck day. The most striking feature is undeniably that incredibly high hood and the massive radiator grille that gives it a distinct, almost human-like face. Corvette was not a huge manufacturer like Ford or GM, but they built trucks for the toughest jobs imaginable. The reason for its bizarre appearance was purely functional. The D600 was designed with a massive Continental gas engine, or a Cummins diesel that physically required the hood to be that tall just to fit it in. The fenders sit high off the tires, giving it a look of being ready to wade through a swamp or deep mud at any moment. It was a heavy-duty prime mover, often used for hauling massive loads of timber or freight across the country before the interstate highway system was fully built. These trucks are incredibly rare today. If you are lucky enough to see one at a vintage truck show, you will notice it towers over everything else from that era. The driver sat way up high, dealing with heavy steering in a loud, hot cabin. It represents the golden age of independent American truck manufacturing, where function dictated form, resulting in a brute force aesthetic that is undeniably cool. The Corvette D600 is a reminder of when trucks were built by hand, for hands that weren't afraid to get dirty. Now for something completely different. To my American viewers, this might look like a golf cart on steroids, but in the UK, this is a cultural icon known as the milk float. Specifically, this is the classic Morrison Electric car. Before Tesla made electric vehicles cool, the British were using these battery-powered workhorses to deliver fresh milk to doorsteps every single morning for decades. They look fragile, but they were actually incredibly robust, carrying tons of glass bottles on their flatbeds while navigating narrow neighborhood streets. The engineering is simple yet brilliant. They are powered by heavy lead-acid batteries, which made them slow, topping out at around 15 to 20 miles per hour. But speed was not needed. Silence was the key. They were designed not to wake up the neighborhood at 4 a.m. The open cabin allowed the milkman to jump in and out hundreds of times a morning without opening a door. It was the ultimate stop-and-go vehicle, perfectly optimized for its specific job. What is truly amazing is their longevity. Because they have very few moving parts compared to a gas engine, some of these floats from the 1950s and 60s are still running today. They became a beloved part of British life. While modern delivery trucks are faster, none have the charm of the humble milk float. It is a testament to the idea that sometimes you do not need horsepower or aerodynamics. You just need a design that fits the job perfectly. You cannot talk about vintage trucks without mentioning the legend, the Peterbilt 351. This is the classic needle nose that ruled the American highways from 1954 all the way to 1976. Now, movie buffs might scream, "That is the truck from the movie Duel." Close, but not quite. The movie used the lighter Model 281, which had a single drive axle. This is the Model 351, its bigger, tougher brother, featuring twin drive axles for heavier loads. It defined the look of the American trucker for a generation. The narrow nose was not just for style, it allowed for better visibility and easier access to the engine for repairs. It is rugged, loud, and smells like diesel and freedom. The 351 features a butterfly hood that opens from the sides, aluminum cabs to save weight, and a chassis that could handle millions of miles of abuse. Truckers love them because they are purely mechanical. There are no computers, no sensors, just gears and guts. Driving one requires real skill and strength. Today, the Peterbilt 351 is a highly sought-after collector's item. Seeing one on the road is an event. It has a menacing, purposeful stance that modern aerodynamic trucks just cannot match. It reminds us of the golden era of trucking when the radio was your only friend and the road went on forever. If you want to experience what trucking was really like in the 60s, sit inside a 351. It is the quintessential American big rig that built this country. If you think three-wheelers are unstable, the British engineers at Scammell would like a word with you. This is the Scammell Townsman, the final evolution of the famous mechanical horse. Designed for the tight, twisting streets of London and old railway yards, this three-wheeled tractor unit could turn on a dime. Literally, it has a turning circle so tight it could practically chase its own tail. Released in the 1960s, the Townsman looks bizarre to modernize, with its fiberglass cabin that looks like something out of a cartoon. The single front wheel steers the vehicle, allowing for incredible maneuverability that a four-wheel truck simply could not achieve. The driver sits in a futuristic beak-like cab. It was powered by a modest Leyland engine, giving it a top speed of roughly 40 to 50 miles per hour, which frankly is terrifying enough on three wheels. It utilized a unique automatic coupling system, allowing the driver to hook up and drop trailers without ever leaving the cab, which was revolutionary for efficiency. However, they were also known for being a bit tippy. If you took a corner too fast without a trailer, things could get scary very quickly. Despite the danger, as a piece of engineering history, the Townsman is fascinating. It solved a specific problem, urban congestion, in a uniquely British way. It is weird, it is wonderful, and it is totally gone from the roads today. Seeing one now feels like looking at a toy that somehow grew up to be a real truck. From Britain to Germany, here is another three-wheeled oddity that defines minimalism, the Tempo Hanseat. Developed post-World War II, Germany needed cheap transport to rebuild, and the Hanseat was the answer. It is basically a motorcycle front end welded to a truck bed. It looks incredibly simple because it is. There is no luxury here, just a steering wheel, a seat, and an engine. It became the backbone of small businesses, delivering everything from coal to vegetables across the country. Mechanically, it is fascinating. It was powered by a tiny two-stroke engine, usually around 400 cc. That means it was loud, smoky, and definitely not fast, topping out around 30 miles per hour fully loaded. The engine sits right above the front wheel, and the engine actually turns with the wheel when you steer. It is crude technology, but it was easy to fix and cheap to run. The blue smoke trailing behind it was a common sight in German towns in the 1950s. Interestingly, after production stopped in Germany, the tooling was sent to India, where it was built as the Bajaj Tempo for decades. It is a vehicle that refuses to die. It is bouncy, unstable, and noisy, but it has a cult following today because driving one is an absolute adventure. You do not drive a Tempo, you wrestle with it. It reminds us that sometimes the simplest solution is the one that lasts the longest. Just make sure you bring some earplugs. Finally, we have the Henschel HS100. When you think of German trucks, you usually think of Mercedes or MAN, but Henschel was a powerhouse of engineering in its own right. The HS100, introduced in the 1960s, is a masterclass in industrial design. It is boxy, muscular, and looks like it was carved out of a solid block of granite. Henschel was originally known for building locomotives and even aircraft, so their trucks were famously over-engineered and incredibly tough. The HS100 featured a distinct bulge on the front grille and the six-pointed Henschel star, which is different from the Mercedes star. It was powered by a robust diesel engine that offered high torque for heavy construction work. These trucks were the kings of the construction site, hauling gravel, cement, and machinery without breaking a sweat. The suspension was advanced for its time, designed to handle rough terrain while keeping the heavy load stable. It was a serious tool for serious work. These trucks are incredibly rare now because the Henschel brand was eventually absorbed by Mercedes-Benz in the late 60s. Seeing an HS100 is a reminder of a lost brand that prioritized durability above all else. It is not the flashiest truck on this list, but it commands respect. It represents the strong, silent type of the vintage truck world. If this truck could talk, it would tell stories of building the modern world, one heavy load at a time. We have just seen the cute Mercedes L319, the futuristic GM Futureliner, the 10-wheeled monster Dabian, and even the 3-wheeled madness of the Scammell Townsman. From German efficiency to American excess, these 10 machines prove that trucking history is anything but boring. So, I have to ask you, if you could restore just one of these and park it in your driveway, which one are you picking? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more insane machinery. Thanks for watching and keep on trucking. Forget everything you think you know about trucks. Modern rigs are just boring plastic boxes compared to the mechanical monsters we've dug up today. We are talking about 500-ton leviathans that shatter pavement, engines that sound like machine guns, and a logging beast so massive it needs water-cooled brakes just to keep from bursting into flames. From a bizarre Mickey Mouse oddity to a Guinness World Record holder that defies physics, these are the 10 strangest vintage trucks that actually existed. You won't believe the engineering freak at number 1. It is absolutely terrifying. So smash that subscribe button, buckle up, and watch until the very last second because this heavy-duty history lesson is about to get wild. Let's ease into this list with something that isn't just strange, it is absolutely stunning. Meet the Diamond T201, often hailed as the Cadillac of trucks. Produced in the United States starting in the late 1930s and running through the 40s, the Diamond T wasn't built for brute force alone, it was built for style. In an era where trucks were strictly utilitarian workhorses, rough, loud, and uncomfortable, the Chicago-based Diamond T Company decided that truck drivers deserved a little bit of luxury. It features a stainless steel grille that looks like it belongs on a high-end luxury sedan, not a pickup. What made the Model 201 so bizarre for its time was its heavy borrowing from passenger car design. The fenders were sweeping and elegant, the cab was lower and more streamlined, and the interior featured passenger car gauges and comfort levels that were unheard of in commercial haulage. Under that stylish hood lay a Hercules six-cylinder engine that was virtually indestructible, capable of hauling a payload of roughly 2,000 pounds. While 2,000 pounds might seem modest by today's heavy-duty standards, back then doing it at highway speeds of 50 miles per hour in such comfort was a revolutionary concept. The Diamond T201 is a testament to a time when industrial design was considered an art form. It is weird because it prioritized beauty in a market segment that usually didn't care about looks at all. It was a one-tonner that blurred the lines between a heavy-duty worker and a Sunday cruiser. Today, finding a 201 in original condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, and collectors in the US will pay a small fortune for the privilege of owning the most stylish truck ever built. It remains a rolling sculpture that proves work trucks don't have to be ugly. From American elegance, we jump across the pond to British quirkiness with the Foden S20. If you look at the cab of this truck, you might notice a resemblance to a certain famous cartoon character. Yes, this is affectionately known in the trucking world as the Mickey Mouse cab. Introduced in the 1950s by Foden, one of Britain's oldest truck manufacturers, the S20 has one of the most distinct faces in history. This is primarily due to the split windshield and the large rounded panels that distinctly mimic a smiling face, giving it a personality that most steel machines lack. The weirdness here isn't just cosmetic, it was a pioneering use of materials. The S20's cab was a composite construction, utilizing fiberglass reinforcing. At the time, this was space-age stuff, helping to shave off hundreds of pounds of deadweight compared to traditional steel cabs. Under the skin, the Foden S20 was a beast, often featuring the legendary Foden two-stroke diesel engine. These engines had a screaming, high-pitched exhaust note that you could hear from miles away. It wasn't fast by modern standards, topping out around 40 miles per hour, but its torque was sufficient to haul heavy loads across the UK's narrow roads. The S20 was a favorite among British haulers for its reliability and that iconic look. Foden took a massive risk with composite materials to prevent the rust that plagued metal cabs in the damp British weather, and it paid off. The shape was distinct, sure, but it was also surprisingly aerodynamic for the 1950s. It's a truck that proves you can be serious about heavy hauling while looking a little bit ridiculous. It's charming, it's bizarre, and it remains a true icon of the UK highways that collectors strive to preserve to this day. Staying in Britain, we move to a rival of Foden, ERS.